Hello everyone, welcome to our audiobook channel. If you enjoy this story or want to hear more exciting content, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. Your feedback helps us improve and bring even more captivating stories. Enjoy listening. Chapter 1 001 Wu Wei. Runic World. Near Maple Leaf Town, within Wild Boar Valley. A team of rune masters, 3 men and 2 women, were hunting an earth-yellow wild boar king over 2 meters tall, 4 meters long, and had a mysterious rune engraved on its head. Quick, quick, quick. Stop it. A wild boar king rarely appears in Wild Boar Valley, don't let it get away. If we manage to take it down, we might even be able to obtain high-rank runes. The girl in the lead, dressed in red daoist robes and holding a staff in one hand, was energetically leading the team. It was clear that this small team was well accustomed to each other, their teamwork was filled with chemistry. Under their combined assault, the mini-boss was slowly, but surely, going down. When the mini-boss looked like it was about to drop, the girl eagerly approached it, disregarding the danger. Her teammate, a boy whose chubbiness tended to give people a sense of security, stopped her, dissuading, "Don't. It's not safe yet. It's fine. I can handle it." The girl stubbornly ignored the chubby boy's advice and began to approach the wild boar king while preparing a fireball for the last hit. Just as she took a step closer, however, an earth spike suddenly shot out from the ground beneath her. At the very moment the girl was about to turn into skewer, a tall figure charged over in the nick of time to knock her backwards. In her stead, however, the figure was stabbed, and perished. When the figure was stabbed, the chubby boy's face turned pale instantly. The big and tall figure was a runic summon of his. Since it died, he, its master, was suffering from the backlash. However, rather than the backlash itself, what pained the boy more was the significance of the loss. It was a summon that he had been raising for 2 whole months. The only silver lining was that the girl wasn't injured, and she had succeeded in unleashing the final blow. Boom! The girl's blazing fireball smashed into the wild boar king, blasting it to smithereens. 4 glowing lights, drops, flew out. 2 of the glowing lights were transparent, indicating common rarity, but the other 2 were bright white lights, uncommon drops. Hunting was like playing the lottery, and they had hit the jackpot by winning 2 uncommon drops. At this moment, the boy and his party could all agree on one thing. It was all worth it. They began to move forward to check out the drops. A common summoning rune, yellow turban soldier, a common runic armament, wild boar crossbow, an uncommon magic rune, earth spike, and an uncommon boar king heart. 2 uncommon drops from a single boss. I must say, Sister Hong, you are truly as lucky as your name implies. But of course. Who do you think I am? Apart from the chubby boy, the rest of the 4 teammates were all huddled together in excitement over the loot. The chubby boy, upon seeing this, stepped forward to join them. Before he could join in, however, Sister Hong, the girl in red, checked the time and called it a day. It's 9+ and getting late. That's it for today, guys. Have a good rest. We'll split the loot tomorrow. All right. The other 3 teammates nodded in agreement. At this point, it was painfully obvious that the boy's other teammates were deliberately ostracizing him. Sister Hong, though, paused to acknowledge him. I almost forgot. Wu Wei, your summon died just now. Since this dropped, I'll give it to you. You should rest early as well instead of wasting time doing pointless things. She then handed a common drop to the boy before summoning her book of runes, upon which, with a light tap, she logged out from Runic World. Only the boy, Wu Wei, was left in Wild Boar Valley in the blink of an eye. It was clear how the boy's teammates saw him from the way they treated him. Unfortunately, such treatment was pretty much standard for runic summoners, specifically, Low-level runic summoners. Although high-leveled runic summoners possessed strength comparable to an entire party, low-level runic summoners offered little to no utility. Especially for a summoner like Wu Wei, whose first core rune was Yellow Turban Soldier, things were quite bad. For the summoning itself to be so weak, what more the summoner? To put it bluntly, he was seen as a burden. To include a runic summoner in the party was often thought of as equivalent to having a dog tagging along. How would a summoner feel if they were treated like that? Such ostracization left Wu Wei feeling quite depressed. Wu Wei pat his face to cheer himself up. Don't mind it, don't mind it. Everything is for the sake of becoming stronger. Wu Wei was not the type of person to complain. Hence, in his opinion, there were two ways to resolve his situation, either by leaving the team or changing his teammates' perception of him. As he couldn't leave the team with how weak he was, he needed to buck up. However, since he could not contribute in terms of combat strength, the boy knew he had to work on other areas so as to not stay redundant. It's only 9 p.m. I'll revive Yellow and explore this map before leaving. Wu Wei crushed the common light in his hand. Following a loud crack, a rune appeared within Wu Wei's palm. He held the rune up and summoned his Book of Runes. The Book of Runes was something that automatically awakened within rune masters once they reached the age of 18. It had two main functions, 1, to inscribe core runes, and 2, to serve as the runemaster's medium of passage to and from runic world. Wu Wei opened his Book of Runes. Although it was called a book, there was only one page within. On this single page was inscribed a single rune. On first glance, it was similar to the Yellow Turban Soldier rune in Wu Wei's hand, but, on closer observation, its pattern was more intricate. The rune in the book and the rune in Wu Wei's hand were the same type of rune. The difference was that the inscribed rune was level 7, hence the more complex design. Wu Wei placed the Yellow Turban Soldier rune in his hand over his inscribed core rune. For rune summoners like Wu Wei, there were several ways to revive fallen summons. The first way was to simply wait out the cooldown, the summon would resurrect over time. Unfortunately, the amount of time needed was not short. On top of this, it would revive with a level penalty. For example, a level 7 Yellow Turban Soldier would resurrect at level 3, or even lower. As for the second method, if the summoner possessed the same type of rune, they could use it to recharge their core rune, in which case the revival would be significantly accelerated, and with minimal penalty. Summons revived in this manner would only lose 1 or 2 levels. As the Yellow Turban Soldier rune in Wu Wei's hand came into contact with his core rune, it began to glow. Then, it turned into a stream of particles that flowed into the Book of Runes. In the next instant, the faded core rune regained its glow. At the same time, as the backlash subsided, Wu Wei started to feel better. Suddenly, a line of barely discernible words appeared in Wu Wei's vision. Ding! Condition 1 fulfilled. What the? Wu Wei's eyes widened as he attempted to take a closer look, but the words had already disappeared. Wu Wei was dumbfounded. He subconsciously opened his attribute window to check. Chapter 2. 002 Attribute Window. Name, Wu Wei. Age, 18. Level, 7. Class, Runic Summoner. Core Rune 1, Yellow Turban Soldier, Level 5. Looking at his own ordinary attribute window caused Wu Wei's face to be filled with disappointment. I thought I had finally activated my cheat somehow, but there's still no change in my attribute window. The attribute window in front of Wu Wei was something that only he possessed, his unique cheat. When he had first learned of its existence, Wu Wei was overjoyed for a long time. He thought that his life was going to change. Unfortunately, reality had hit him fast and hard. Although he tried all sorts of methods, he was still unable to find any use for this cheat. It was like looking at it was all it was good for. Well, as long as it didn't harm him, then so be it. However, When Wu Wei was forming the contract with his first core rune, his cheat suddenly acted up and suggested he choose a yellow turban soldier as his first core rune. And thus started Wu Wei's path of a runic summoner. However, it seemed to go into hibernation and never reappeared. It was not unreasonable to say that Wu Wei's current predicament was all the fault of this so-called cheat. Yet, Wu Wei wasn't the kind to lament the heavens or blame others. After all, he believed that his path was his to choose. Wu Wei decided that he would not complain no matter how difficult things would become. Instead, he would only try his best to overcome everything. Although it was just for an instant, I'm sure I did not imagine that. There had clearly been a system notification earlier that said Condition 1 fulfilled. It begged the question. What was the condition that had been fulfilled? Continuing from this line of thought, since there was a Condition 1, could there be other conditions as well? And what would happen if they were all fulfilled? Also, if I use another yellow turban soldier rune again, will I be able to trigger it once more? A myriad of thoughts was swirling in Wu Wei's head. Taking out a pen and some paper, he scribbled down his thoughts as a way to organize his thoughts. Forget it. There's too little useful information. I should stop worrying about it for now and think of a way to get another yellow turban soldier rune first. The task at hand is what's important. After jotting down acquire another yellow turban soldier rune, Wu Wei put the matter aside and continued with what he had planned to do. First, he resummoned the yellow turban soldier with a wave of his hand. Next, he carefully examined his surroundings in the Wild Boar Valley. This was Wu Wei's habit. Each time his party arrived at a new monster farming spot, Wu Wei would investigate the map's layout. He would collect information on the terrain, resources, runic monsters etc., to optimize the party's grinding. In a situation where his combat strength did not match his teammates, Wu Wei could only resort to such methods to improve his position in the party. Although the effects did not seem apparent, and his teammates did not seem to care much about the information he collected, Wu Wei continued to do so. He did not do it to please his teammates but to cultivate a good habit of staying cautious on an unfamiliar map and to hone his ability to assess danger. Never fight an unprepared battle, and never make an uninformed decision. Wu Wei felt this was the principle to follow when it came to monster farming. And it had proven why today. This place is. After exploring halfway through, Wu Wei spotted something that stopped him in his tracks. In front of him were a few giant rocks stacked on top of each other. Between them was a small human-sized crevice that led into a cave large enough to accommodate a few people. Wu Wei's immediate impression of this spot was that it was a good hiding spot. If he hid inside, regular wild boars in Wild Boar Valley would not be able to attack him. After all, regular wild boars did not possess the earth spike skill. Moreover, even if they did, Wu Wei would not be afraid. This was because, from Wu Wei's observation, the inside of the cave was rocky, leaving only one small patch of soil. As long as he was careful about that area, there would be no need to be afraid of any earth spikes. This spot is not bad. It's a good place for both farming monsters and setting up camp. I'll mark this spot. Wu Wei was delighted to discover this crevice, but his investigation did not end there. With yellow, Wu Wei continued on, carefully avoiding the wild boars in the valley as he completed his map exploration. Wild Boar Valley was not considered a large zone, but it was not small either. By the time Wu Wei had finished his exploration, it was almost midnight. Having toiled for an entire day, Wu Wei finally called out his book of runes and tapped on it. The space around Wu Wei began to ripple like a reflection of the moon in the water. In the next moment, Wu Wei found himself back in his dormitory. Although he had logged in and out many times, Wu Wei was still not used to the Book of Runes' divine ability. After resting for a while in the dorm, Wu Wei, who had been busy the entire day, decided to head out and find something to eat before sleeping. For the convenience of students returning from Runic World, the academy had specially placed a 24/7 canteen close to the dormitory buildings. Wu Wei arrived at the canteen after a short walk. Although it was in the middle of the night, Wu Wei found that there were still many people. Most of them were in groups of 4 or 5. Some wore expressions of excitement, while others looked defeated and resigned. Clearly, they were teams that had just returned from Runic World. People like Wu Wei who came out to eat alone were relatively rare. After all, Rune Masters all operated in teams in Runic World. Wu Wei sighed lightly as he swiped his card and ordered a bowl of beef noodles. As he looked around for a seat after picking up his order, Wu Wei suddenly felt goosebumps, and his gaze fell upon a nearby table. His 4 teammates, who said they were leaving to rest early at 9 p.m., were currently seated there. There were leftovers on their table and a few cases of beer. It was clear that they had been here for a long time. They had probably gathered here as soon as they went offline. What Wu Wei could be sure of was that he had received no calls or messages on his phone the entire time. Right then, the girl addressed as Sister Hong happened to raise her head and noticed Wu Wei. When their eyes met, the air became awkward. Wu Wei ended the awkwardness by smiling and giving a simple nod of acknowledgement. He then carried his noodles to find a table in a different corner. When Wu Wei finished eating his noodles and looked around, he noticed his teammates had left without bothering to say hi. Wu Wei remained in silence for a moment. After a while, he got up to head back to his dorm. After returning to his dorm, Wu Wei washed his face. Afterward, he picked up a book that he read until 2 a.m. before going to sleep. The next day, Wu Wei got up at 6:30. He jogged and ate breakfast before heading to his team room. When he arrived outside the team room, Wu Wei was about to open the door when an electronic alert sounded. Ding! This is the activity room of Team 8911. You are not a team member and do not have permission to enter. Please do not trespass. When Wu Wei heard the electronic alert, his eyebrow raised up. Chapter 3:003 Parting Ways. Yahwarun Academy. Inside Activity Room 8911. Aside from Wu Wei, the other 4 team members who usually wouldn't have come until 9 a.m. had arrived in the activity room early for the first time ever. They were all quietly waiting for Wu Wei's arrival. Soon, they heard the sound of footsteps, followed by the electronic alert. Zhou Hong and the others perked up. What do you guys think he will do next? Probably get on his knees. He'll beg us to accept him. After all, apart from us, no other team will accept a summoner dumb enough to contract with a yellow turban soldier. He'll definitely cause a scene. Regardless of whether he begs or causes trouble, we can't accept him anymore. Sister Hong, you have to be firm when the time comes. Don't be soft-hearted even if he says he saved you yesterday. Don't worry, I know what to do. Wu Wei could not keep up with us in the first place. Now that his summon has died, he is even weaker and will only drag our team down. We can't keep him no matter what. As for saving me, that doesn't even count. I would have been able to react even without his yellow turban soldier. On the contrary, all it did was disturb my rhythm of attack. Still, no matter what, I've already compensated him. One yellow turban soldier summoning rune is enough compensation. I don't owe him anything anymore. Then, it's decided, we'll kick him out. Zhou Hong, Ho Ji Hung and the other 3 wrapped up their discussion and paid attention to the situation outside the room. However, they soon realized that nothing seemed to be happening. Exchanging looks, they opened the door and were startled. Wu Wei was quietly standing there staring back at them. However, he wasn't wearing the usual naive smile they were familiar with. Instead, Wu Wei appeared so calm and composed that he gave them a very unfamiliar feeling. The sudden change in his demeanor left Zhou Hong and the others at a momentary loss of how to react. In the end, they decided to be frank. Wu Wei, don't blame us. Your summon is just too weak to keep up with us, And you aren't any better. Dragging you around is hindering us. Just look at the battle yesterday, you couldn't even do anything of much use. That's right. Also, your personality doesn't suit us. It's pointless for us to stay as a team, so I'm sorry. Go look for a team that will accept you. Upon hearing his teammates' words, the corner of Wu Wei's mouth twitched. Too weak? Can't do anything of much use? My personality doesn't suit you? Dragging you guys down and hindering you? At this moment, Wu Wei was flabbergasted. I admit that I'm weak, and I agree that my personality is not that compatible with the team. However, I am unable to agree with the other 2 points. I'm useless in battle? Only recently, after you all leveled up, my yellow turban soldier stopped being able to tank, right? But what about before? Was yellow not always tanking on the front lines? We take the brunt of the damage and get the least amount of experience and earnings for your benefit, but, oh, now that you've grown stronger, you despise me for being weak? For being useless? Do you guys even have a shred of conscience? Although yellow can't tank for us anymore, isn't he still contributing his fair share through crowd control, aggroing, and scouting? Just look at yesterday with the Wild Boar King, how we were able to steadily take it down and how Zhou Hong survived. All of you should know this much. Therefore, I can't agree on this point. I know I'm a burden, but that's exactly why I've been working hard to improve. I've always tried my best to contribute through my exploration and tactical abilities, so I don't think you can say that I haven't contributed at all. Moreover, I've always been the one who takes the least share of the loot. I get the least resources, but I do the dirtiest work. How am I dragging you down? As for your lack of growth, can you blame me for that? Other people stay in Runic World for a few days at a time, but what about you guys? Once in a blue moon, you grind until 9. You think you've worked hard as if you performed overtime. To you guys, hunting a mini-boss is an occasion worth celebrating. Normally, I don't even see you guys training your skills, so honestly, it's not my fault that you are not improving. The problem is you guys do not have a plan for your own future. Listen to my advice. This mindset of yours is not suitable for being a rune master. You would be better off selling potatoes in the countryside. At least, that way, you won't have to worry about dying one day. Wu Wei's words were especially harsh, causing the faces of Zhou Hong and the other 3 to change. Yeah, that's right, this is exactly how you always act. You're clearly more useless than us, yet you look at us every day with contempt. You think you're great just because you carry a few old books with you every day when all you do is try to boss us around in battle. Who do you think you are? You're nothing but a trash summoner who contracted with a yellow turban soldier. You're so hard-working and upstanding, but you just rely on us in the end. Without us, you wouldn't even dare take a step into Runic World. In truth, the biggest contradiction between Wu Wei and the team wasn't the contrast in strength. It lay in the attitude of both parties towards the profession of Rune Master. Wu Wei sought to do his best to become stronger, and he was willing to put in the hard work for it. However, Zhou Hong and the others were the kind of people who took things for granted and just lived by the day. Yet, they were somehow still able to feel that they had worked very hard but simply had poor luck regarding talent and background. They felt that if given the resources, they would easily surpass those so-called prodigies. In short, they were 2 completely different types of people. How could such people ever gel? If Wu Wei were a little stronger, they might have admired him. However, Wu Wei's strength was far from impressive. Therefore, in their eyes, Wu Wei's efforts were nothing but futile, and the mismatch only served to make him seem like a person full of himself to them. The way that things had played out was actually a foregone conclusion. Looking at the teammates he had provoked, Wu Wei, having vented his grievances, suddenly felt that further arguing would be pointless, so he waved his hand dismissively. All right, I don't want to and don't have the time to argue with you guys. Kick me, right? Fine, just give me compensation for being kicked and share the loot from yesterday. Yesterday, I was still a member of the team, so don't think of taking what's rightfully mine. No way we would be so despicable. Take your things and get lost. Zhou Hong immediately threw a backpack toward Wu Wei. Wu Wei caught it. When he opened it to check, he saw an unopened common drop inside. There was also an unopened orb that contained the runic armament, wild boar crossbow, and a stack of runic stones. Wu Wei did a rough calculation. After confirming that the value of the items was his rightful share of the loot, Wu Wei decided not to waste his breath further and turned around to leave. Chapter 4:004 Wild Boar Crossbow. On his way back from Team 8911's activity room, Wu Wei was in low spirits. It wasn't that he couldn't bear to leave the team but that he felt he had more or less failed. He felt that if he had been slightly stronger, or worked just a bit harder, perhaps it would not have resulted in him being kicked out of the squad today. Instead, he could have left on his own terms. When faced with failure, some people would think that the world was to blame instead of looking at themselves. There would also be people like Wu Wei, who would feel that, at the end of the day, for not being able to prevent such things from happening, there was no one to blame but themselves. However, delving deeper, such a mentality was, in actuality, one full of conceit. Wu Wei was conceited in thinking he could do everything well and that everything that did not go as planned was just a result of him not putting in enough effort. Nonetheless, judging whether such a mentality was good or bad is not easy. Yet, one thing was sure, Wu Wei would be able to pull himself together quickly, thanks to his mentality. Instead of wallowing in disappointment, he patted himself on the face and encouraged himself, "Pull yourself together. What I need to do is think about my next step." Wu Wei was now teamless. Reality begged the question, how would he go back to Runic World from now on? To Rune Masters, Runic World was a place of utmost importance. The resources that Rune Masters required to cultivate all originated from Runic World. Runic World was not just some virtual world. It was a world filled with real opportunities and real danger. The large number of Rune Masters who died in Runic World each year was a testament to the difficulty of survival there. Hence, Rune Masters always formed teams to explore while looking out for each other. Now that he had been kicked out of a team, finding another with his current conditions would not be easy. And even if he were to find one, Wu Wei knew that he would not be able to guarantee that an incident like today would not repeat itself. Being kicked out was an experience that Wu Wei did not want to relive. While Wu Wei had a headache over his situation, he was suddenly reminded of the place he had found in Wild Boar Valley last night. In that instant, a bold idea formed in his mind. Since no team will be willing to accept me, I will just enter Runic World alone. Wu Wei was decisive and would not hesitate after making his mind up. However, he didn't immediately take out his book of runes to proceed to Runic World directly. That would be a little too reckless. Entering Runic World, especially solo, was something that required careful preparation. The first preparation Wu Wei needed to make was to purchase supplies. Water, dry ration, sleeping bags, and runic flint were some of the most essential items that he needed to bring along, especially sleeping bags and runic flint. He didn't need to get them with Zhou Hong and the others in the past since they did not camp out. However, now that it would be impossible for him to go in solo and expect to come out within a day, he could not be careless. These items were sold by the academy, so Wu Wei could procure everything he needed in a single trip to the marketplace. After buying all the items, Wu Wei took out the common orb that Zhou Hong had given him. After opening it, a runic armament appeared in Wu Wei's hand. Runic armament. Quality. Equipment level. Equipment requirement. Equipment effect, can fire one wild boar crossbow bolt with an attack power equivalent to a wild boar king's normal attack every 20 minutes. The crossbow had an outrageously slow reload time. Furthermore, its attack power was not very impressive either. It could only be said to be an ordinary piece of equipment. However, Wu Wei treated it preciously. After all, it still boosted his combat power. What made Wu Wei even more satisfied was that the crossbow did not have any equipping requirements, he could use it right away. With this, I will be able to proceed a little smoother. However, this alone won't be enough, I still need more. As he said this, Wu Wei's gaze fell upon the stack of 10 runic stones. Runic stones were used as the primary form of currency in runic world. In the real world, one runic stone was worth roughly $1,500. 10 runic stones were worth 15,000 USD. This was not a small amount at all. Unfortunately, it was not a significant amount of money for a rune master. Wu Wei picked up the 10 runic stones and headed through the back of the dormitory building. Behind the dormitory building was a trading market filled with shops and stalls. Some of them were run by students. As soon as Wu Wei arrived at the market, he felt like he had entered a different world. Big sale! Big sale! Level 10 runic armaments on sale. 1 runic armament for 50 runic stones. Don't miss it whether you're just passing by or not. Selling runic pills. This runic pill was personally refined by a third-year female alchemist. 1 for 5 runic stones. Blind boxes for opening, blind boxes for opening. From common runes to legendary runes, as long as you're lucky, you'll get what you want for just 10 runic stones. What are you waiting for? It's your loss if you don't buy. The best runes are waiting here for you to bring home. The non-stop shouting of the peddlers created a strong and lively atmosphere within the marketplace. Whenever Wu Wei came in, he would always watch the people opening blind boxes near the entrance for a while. However, he would never try it himself. People were all born with a tendency to gamble. The difference was that while some people could control it, others couldn't. Wu Wei belonged to the type with self-restraint. Why, you ask? Well, just because he was poor. Before today, 6 runic stones had been the sum of all his possessions. And although today he possessed 16 runic stones, he still did not dare to think of trying his luck. Why? Because he could not afford to lose even 10 runic stones. Striding past the blind box stall, Wu Wei quickly walked deeper into the market, where a specific stall was located. It was a stall run by a person covered in a black robe. This mysterious person sold runic pills. Wu Wei stopped in front of the stall. Seeing Wu Wei come over only to stand without saying a word, the black-robed stall owner pulled out a sign with words written on it. What do you want? A runic pill? Just one. The black-robed stall owner pulled back the sign, wanting to write that runic pills were not sold individually. As the black-robed stall owner was about to finish writing, Wu Wei repeated what he wanted. I just want one. The black-robed stall owner stopped writing, erased the words on the sign, and began to rewrite. 1 pill for 5 runic stones. Before the stall owner could finish the last character, Wu Wei bargained. I only have 4 runic stones. The stall owner stopped writing and frowned. If you don't sell it, I won't leave. The black-robed stall owner deliberated for a moment. Then, he took out a runic pill bottle and tipped a pill out, handing it to Wu Wei. Thank you. Wu Wei took the pill and handed over 5 runic stones. The bewildered stall owner began writing something. Didn't you say you only had 4? I thought I only had 4, but since I have 5, I'll give them all to you. The black-robed stall owner was stunned. After a while, he wiped off the half-written words on the sign and began writing 5 words. You are a good person. Wu Wei grinned. He then pointed at an old-looking black bottle of pills on display. Thank you. Is that still of any use to you? If not, can you give it to me? 2 minutes later, a satisfied Wu Wei left the market with a black bottle in his hands. Next, he visited the cafeteria, where he bought over 10 portions of food, before finally returning to his dormitory, upon which he summoned his Book of Runes. Chapter 5 005 First Kill. Runic World. Near Maple Leaf Town, in Wild Boar Valley. Wu Wei, who had completed all of his preparations, once again returned to this place. The spot where he appeared after logging in was where he, together with Zhou Hong and the others, had hunted the Wild Boar King the previous day. After arriving, Wu Wei immediately checked his surroundings and confirmed that he was alone. There also did not seem to be any trace of recent activity. Evidently, his 4 former teammates hadn't come online since. This came as no surprise to Wu Wei. With their personalities, they should be preoccupied with selling their loot and using the money to have a good time and buy new equipment immediately. Sigh, if I knew I would be kicked out of the team today, I would have set my login point to that spot yesterday to save the trouble. After letting out a soft sigh, Wu Wei summoned Yellow. With Yellow, Wu Wei headed towards the hiding spot he had found the previous night. As a day had passed, the runic wild boars that had been cleared yesterday had already respawned. As there were more mobs than usual, it took Wu Wei a while to arrive at his destination. After returning to the place with large rocks, Wu Wei crawled into the little cave through the crevice. Inside, he summoned his Book of Runes and took out the bottle of medicinal dregs that he had gotten from the exchange market and the food he had bought from the cafeteria. One of the many handy uses of the Book of Runes was the storage function. However, the storage space of a level 8 Book of Runes was relatively small, only about the size of a standard refrigerator. The storage space had been filled to the brim by Wu Wei, so it was quite an effort to get only what he needed out. Afterward, Wu Wei put on a mask and a pair of gloves before carefully opening the bottle of medicinal dregs and pouring some out. As he poured the dregs out, he examined their properties. Item. Description: this fails to qualify as medicine and barely qualifies as poison. Consuming it will induce the effects of diarrhea, dizziness, and weakness in the limbs. It is suitable for poisoning targets below level 10 with low poison resistance. Yes, this was the reason why Wu Wei had gone to look for the black-robed stall owner. In his free time, Wu Wei enjoyed checking out the marketplace. On one excursion, he had discovered the black-robed stall owner's stall and noticed these dregs. At that time, Wu Wei had already thought of using them to hunt monsters, so it was a plan that he had long envisioned. However, Wu Wei had never dared to approach before because he was intimidated. Make no mistake, Wu Wei did not dare to approach because he was afraid of the intimidating stall owner and thought he might be beaten up. The reason was that he did not want to suffer emotional damage from not being able to afford the price. However, after a period of observation, he realized that, despite looking fierce and powerful, the stall owner was actually an antisocial introvert. Since Wu Wei had become teamless, he finally plucked up the courage to approach. Unexpectedly, things had gone relatively smoothly. Black-robed bro, whether I make it or not all depends on this medicine of yours. Please give me your blessing and make this work on the runic boars. If this succeeds, I will not forget to repay you when I return. After making a deep bow, Wu Wei started to mix the medicinal dregs with the food he had bought. Next, he ordered Yellow, his trusty yellow turban soldier, to head outside with the poisoned food. Wu Wei's plan was straightforward. He would use Yellow to lure the monsters, feed them the food, wait for the medicinal effects to take effect, and kill them. Simple and direct. Regarding monster hunting, simple and direct was all one needed. Wu Wei proceeded with his plan. After Yellow went out, he began to make loud sounds with his voice. Although a common summon like him barely had any intelligence and could not speak, he could still make sounds. In no time, the commotion he was making had attracted the attention of a runic wild boar nearby. Weighing close to 180 kilograms, the 1 meter tall, 1.5 meter long runic wild boar suddenly charged towards Yellow. Although the boar's intelligence was on par with Yellow's, it was extremely fierce. With its eyes turning red, the runic wild boar lowered its head as it approached. The speed of its charge was clearly too fast for Yellow to dodge in time. Fortunately, Wu Wei had a countermeasure. When the wild boar was about to charge into Yellow, Wu Wei slapped his book of runes. Return. Upon Wu Wei's command, Yellow was unsummoned and returned to the book. The runic wild boar, which couldn't react in time, directly crashed into the rocks in front of it. Bang! The collision sounded like a watermelon bursting open. Blood splattered everywhere, and, with a loud thud, the half-dead runic wild boar lost its balance and collapsed to the ground. Wu Wei was stunned by what he had just seen. This pig is so dumb. Wu Wei started to feel that he wouldn't even need to use the medicinal dregs. Yellow. Wu Wei quickly resummoned Yellow and ordered it to bring a rock over to clubber the boar to death. After a brief but fierce clubbing, the runic wild boar died. At the same time that the runic wild boar died, a stream of light appeared and flowed into Yellow. This was the first time Yellow enjoyed all of the experience points of a runic wild boar to himself. In an instant, Yellow, who had dropped to level 5 before, leveled back up to level 6. Suddenly, a line of words appeared in front of Wu Wei's eyes. 1/100. The line of words only flashed past for an instant, but Wu Wei did not miss it. Wu Wei's eyes narrowed. Does this mean killing 100 runic wild boars is another condition? What will happen if this condition is fulfilled? Although Wu Wei still had no concrete answers, he was in no hurry to seek them. What he needed to do was clear: hunt runic wild boars 100 times. The answers would come after. Having successfully hunted a runic wild boar without using the poison and finding another condition through his cheat, Wu Wei felt highly motivated. Let's continue. Wu Wei quickly began round 2. This time, he adjusted his tactics to use the rock wall again. Unfortunately, the second round did not go as smoothly as the first. Yellow had to shout for an extremely long time before he could lure any runic wild boars over and succeed. Unfortunately, it was not one or two of them but an entire group. A group of 6 to 7 runic wild boars around level 7 or 8 was lured over. Wu Wei quickly unsummoned Yellow. Round 2 was a failure. Wu Wei failed to hunt a single wild boar despite expending one portion of poisoned food. After Yellow was unsummoned, the runic wild boars split the food on the ground amongst themselves before sauntering off. While they feasted, Wu Wei simply waited with bated breath. He was afraid of accidentally attracting their attention and ending up being surrounded. Although his hiding spot was relatively safe, he didn't want to risk ending up in that situation. Hence, he just watched them until they finally left. After this failure, Wu Wei learned from his mistakes and reformulated his plan. He decided to dig a hole. Chapter 6. 006 Elite Monster. Wu Wei and Yellow took about an hour to dig out a pit 2 meters wide and 3 meters deep. They then spent a lot of effort placing stones around the edge of the trap. After toiling for about 2 hours, Wu Wei was finally ready to resume the hunt. This time, having learned his lesson, Wu Wei chose not to let Yellow shout anymore in case he provoked too many runic wild boars. Instead, Wu Wei first carefully scanned the surroundings to spot lone, isolated boars. Once he discovered an ideal target, Wu Wei did not carelessly provoke them. Instead, he would first get their attention by making small noises. Only when they came closer would he start throwing stones to enrage them. Through this method, Wu Wei finally got on the right track. In the next 5 to 6 hours, Wu Wei and Yellow lured over 8 runic wild boars. Although they couldn't kill all of them, they did manage to kill 6, so it was still a high success rate. Furthermore, the sacrifice of these 6 runic wild boars helped Yellow to level back up to level 7. Leveling twice in a single day was something that Wu Wei had never experienced when he was with Zhou Hong and the others. This unreal leveling pace made Wu Wei feel like he was dreaming. The only bad thing was that the drop rate of these runic wild boars was extremely low. Including these 6, Wu Wei had in total killed 7 already, yet not even a single item had dropped. The sky is already dark, and the runic wild boars have started to roost. I've also been out at it for an entire day, so it's time to rest soon. I'll hunt just one last one. After I hunt one more, I'll call it a day. Wu Wei re-emerged from the crevice and, together with Yellow, scanned the surroundings. He found his next target very quickly. It was a lone runic wild boar just a short distance away. The size of this boar. Wu Wei suddenly realized that there was something off about its size. It was much bigger than an ordinary runic wild boar, only a little bit smaller than the wild boar king that Wu Wei had previously hunted with Zhou Hong. It's bigger than a normal monster but smaller than a boss. Could this runic wild boar be an elite monster? Wu Wei squinted as his thoughts raced. His useless cheat had a certain probability of being able to see a target's attribute window when Wu Wei squinted at it. Wu Wei did not know what the principle behind this ability was, but what mattered was that it was effective. After squinting for a while, the attribute window of the runic wild boar popped up. Name. Rank. Level. Skill. There are its attributes. It's really an elite monster. As he read its attributes, Wu Wei's eyebrows twitched. At this moment, Wu Wei was posed a question. It was an elite monster, so what now? An elite monster, it will be much harder to kill than an ordinary runic wild boar. What to do? After thinking about it long and hard, Wu Wei gritted his teeth. I'll kill it. If I kill it, it might even drop uncommon loot. And even if I fail, I have nothing to lose except food. Having made up his mind, Wu Wei carefully began to step back. After retreating to safety, he took out the black-robed stall owner's medicinal dregs and the remaining 3 portions of food. After mixing the medicine dregs into the food, Wu Wei placed 2 portions at the bottom of the pit he had dug. After making preparations, Wu Wei hid at the edge of the crevice and instructed Yellow to begin slowly luring the elite runic wild boar. As Wu Wei had already carried out the same plan over 10 times, he was moving with proficiency. Without much of a hitch, the elite monster was slowly lured towards the trap, and there were just a few meters left. However, at this moment, something unexpected happened. A wandering runic wild boar suddenly approached, and it noticed Yellow. Not good. Wu Wei's expression darkened. He had a feeling that things were about to go south. As expected, when the runic wild boar that appeared saw Yellow, its eyes instantly turned red, and it suddenly began to charge at him. Stone it. After stoning it, run towards the trap. Faced with such a sudden turn of events, Wu Wei's expression had changed drastically, but he was still able to make a quick decision. Under Wu Wei's orders, Yellow threw the stone in its hand toward the elite monster. Then, without caring if it connected, he turned around and made a mad dash for the trap. As Yellow's accuracy was average, it had not managed to land a direct hit on the elite monster. However, he did hit its side, and that was sufficient. Runic wild boars were notoriously hot-headed. They would charge at people for just glancing at them, let alone attack them. The elite monster's eyes turned red as hot steam flared out from its snout. Suddenly, it activated its skill, Wild Boar Charge, and began charging towards Yellow at a terrifying speed. Although Yellow had a head start, the elite runic wild boar could close the distance in the blink of an eye. At this critical moment, the paths of the normal runic wild boar and the elite runic wild boar crossed. The elite runic wild boar simply rammed into normal runic wild boar, tossing it towards Yellow. Yellow was sent flying for a few meters. Wu Wei's expression worsened. He could not afford to let Yellow die again. Wu Wei activated the Book of Runes to unsummon Yellow, upon which Yellow immediately dissipated into light and returned to the book. However, this move of Wu Wei's exposed him, and the elite runic wild boar set its sights on him. Wu Wei raised the wild boar crossbow in response, but after a moment of hesitation, he chose not to shoot. There was no choice, the elite runic wild boar was simply too fast. While Wu Wei had practiced using the crossbow, he was not confident enough to bet on scoring a clean hit in this situation. If he missed, he would lose his trump card. Wu Wei put the crossbow away and hastily dived for the crevice. The elite runic wild boar crashed into the rocks. Thankfully, Wu Wei had made it within time. The impact of the collision might have been extremely powerful, but it did not damage Wu Wei. After all, these gigantic rocks easily weighed over 6,000 kilograms, so they were practically immovable. However, Wu Wei was soon disappointed, because the elite runic wild boar appeared perfectly fine itself. It had obviously managed to hold back at the last moment, unlike the dumb wild boar earlier. However, although things hadn't gone according to plan, Wu Wei quickly decided on his next move and threw the last portion of drugged food right in the elite runic wild boar's face. The elite runic wild boar was stunned at first. Still, its greed took over when it smelled and tasted the food. It began to devour the food without hesitation, finishing every single last scrap instantly. After finishing the food, it even tried peering into the crevice to check if there was any more. However, when it peered in, Wu Wei, who had been waiting patiently the entire time, pulled the trigger. A crossbow bolt shot out, piercing through the eye of the elite monster. Chapter 7 007 Boar Slaughtering Sword. Swoosh. The crossbow bolt that Wu Wei fired pierced straight through the elite runic wild boar's eye. A terrible shriek resounded throughout the entire wild boar valley. The thoroughly maddened elite runic wild boar started to thrash about on a rampage. It frenziedly attacked the rocks, wanting nothing but to kill Wu Wei. However, as the rocks were too heavy, even the elite runic wild boar had no way to make them budge. And as the crevice was too small, trying to drill in was even more impossible. Therefore, the elite runic wild boar's injuries only became aggravated under its maddened frenzy, worsening its suffering. In the end, elite runic wild boar only lasted for another 10 minutes under the state before the effects of the medicine kicked in, and it finally collapsed to the ground. Even so, Wu Wei remained as cautious as ever. Although the elite runic wild boar looked like it was already done for, he still did not dare to go out. He also did not even dare to let Yellow approach yet. Instead, he waited and waited, until 20 minutes were up. After 20 minutes, Wu Wei resummoned Yellow. When Yellow reappeared, Wu Wei raised the crossbow and aimed it at the elite runic wild boar before firing another shot. This shot finished off the elite runic wild boar, and a stream of experience points rushed into Yellow's body, instantly causing him to level up to level 8. At the same time, a line of small numbers appeared in front of Wu Wei's eyes. 13/100. The number of experience points the elite runic wild boar had given Yellow was equivalent to 5 ordinary runic wild boars. However, Wu Wei was focused on something else. He was looking at the spot where the elite runic wild boar had died. There was a floating ball of light. It had dropped an item. Although it was only transparent and not white, Wu Wei was very excited. He quickly ordered Yellow to fetch it. As soon as Wu Wei touched the glowing ball of light, a stream of information flooded his mind. Runic armament, wild boar sword. A runic armament. Wu Wei was both shocked and thrilled. He quickly crushed the ball of light within his hand. A crude-looking, 1.4 meters long sword appeared. Grade. Equipment effect, charge for 3 seconds to activate boar slaughtering / No cooldown time. PS, you can use the equipment effect indefinitely if you have enough stamina. A runic armament with a skill. Wu Wei's heart almost jumped out of his chest when he saw its attributes. He had hit the jackpot. Although the sword and the wild boar crossbow were both common grade runic armaments, their values could not be compared. While the wild boar crossbow was worth only 20 to 30 spirit stones, this wild boar sword would fetch at least 200 spirit stones, or even higher. This was because the wild boar saber allowed its user to activate a skill. However, the usefulness did not lie in the strength of the skill. In fact, Wu Wei was sure that this boar slaughtering slash was not a powerful skill and that it should be inferior to the wild boar crossbow in terms of attacking power. Furthermore, the charging time of 3 seconds made it unpractical for battle. Instead of combat, the actual usefulness of a skill-type runic armament was in cultivation. A rune master could train his body by using the skill of a skill-type runic armament. For instance, cultivating the skill of a level 9 common grade runic armament would allow any rune master to attain a level of physical strength comparable to a level 9 runic martial artist. Furthermore, the runic armament's skill could even be learned through repeated practice. This meant that the rune master would become able to use the runic armament's skill without needing to equip the runic armament itself. For a rune master like Wu Wei, who was not even tier 1 yet, such a runic armament was a godsend. Earlier, I was complaining about my poor luck, but I turned out to be lucky after all. Wu Wei felt moved beyond words at the sight of the wild boar sword in his hands. On the spot, he decided to try out the runic armament's boar slaughtering slash. After charging the skill for 3 seconds, the sword suddenly raised itself up, guiding Wu Wei to take one step forward. Then, a surge of strength welled up in his hands. Next, Wu Wei slashed downwards. It was a slash that contained an unbelievable amount of power but consumed a lot of physical energy. When Wu Wei unleashed the slash, he felt 30% of his physical strength drain out, leaving him weak and panting. Wu Wei was satisfied. After taking a short break, he performed another slash. After the second slash, Wu Wei roughly ascertained that his current physical strength enabled him to use the skill only 3 times consecutively. After trying out the third slash, Wu Wei was fully drained and could not even stand properly. However, he gritted his teeth and endured it. After taking a while to recover, he pushed himself to perform the fourth slash. After the fourth slash, Wu Wei had to rely on Yellow to pull him back into the crevice. While he rested, he instructed Yellow to equip the boar slaughtering sword and practice the skill. Unexpectedly, when Yellow picked up the boar slaughtering sword and activated the skill, a line of numbers appeared in front of Wu Wei's eyes once more. 1/5000. Is this another new condition? Wu Wei had grown accustomed to the numbers, so he did not dwell on the matter too much. Instead, he focused his attention on Yellow and observed as Yellow practiced the boar slaughtering slash. Yellow was clearly more physically powerful than Wu Wei. While it took all Wu Wei had to perform 4 slashes, Yellow could perform 20 in a row. After 20 slashes, Yellow's speed finally began to slow down, and he stopped at 32. In reality, this level of physical strength was only average. A level 8 runic martial artist could perform at least 50 or 60 consecutive slashes effortlessly. Unfortunately, Yellow was just a common grade yellow turban soldier. Now that both Yellow and himself were thoroughly exhausted, Wu Wei decided to call it a day, and he began to consume some dry ration and water. As for Yellow, since he was a runic summon, he didn't need to eat anything. All he needed was the spiritual energy from Wu Wei. After resting for a while, Wu Wei resummoned his Book of Runes to start cultivating. By using the Book of Runes as a medium, Wu Wei began cultivating and absorbing the spiritual energy between heaven and earth, which he transferred to Yellow. During the process, Wu Wei reserved only a tiny bit of spiritual energy for himself, only about 1%. The rest was transferred to Yellow. This was something that couldn't be helped for Wu Wei. After all, a runic summoner was only as strong as his summons. Ironically, Wu Wei was so chubby not because he didn't work hard but because he cultivated too much, neglecting exercise in the process. However, now that he had the boar slaughtering sword, Wu Wei was hopeful about changing things. I'll work harder, and I'll get even luckier. Things will get even better from now on. Chapter 8 008 Wild Boar King. Wu Wei spent the next few days in Wild Boar Valley. Wu Wei had discovered this area with Zhou Hong and the others, and few people came here. After 5 days, apart from Zhou Hong and her team, Wu Wei saw no one else. Regarding his former teammates, seeing them did not affect Wu Wei at all. Still, he adjusted his schedule to avoid meeting them face to face after seeing them come back here. Initially, after obtaining the boar slaughtering sword, Wu Wei would train at night and hunt during the day. Now, he trained in the day and hunted at night instead. In the first 2 days that Zhou Hong and her team returned to Wild Boar Valley, they did not discover Wu Wei's presence. It was just 2 days, after all. On the third day, they seemed to have concluded their business in Wild Boar Valley, as they had even taken down the boss anyway, and they left to a different map. Wu Wei found it hard to understand why they did not hunt to level 10 and reach tier 1 first before going to a different zone. However, even though he could not understand why Wu Wei did not bother to advise them, they all had their own paths. After 5 days, Wu Wei could be said to have reaped a bountiful harvest. Firstly, in terms of hunting, Wu Wei could hunt up to 14 or 15 runic wild boars daily. In just 5 days, he had killed a total of 76 runic wild boars and obtained several drops. Besides the boar slaughtering sword that he had obtained on the first day, he earned 2 to 3 drops each day. However, these drops were basic materials, body parts of boars. Wild boar ribs, wild boar kidneys, wild boar trotters, wild boar kidneys. In 5 days, Wu Wei had acquired all the parts of a wild boar. The number of runic wild boars he had killed had now reached 81/100. Hunting these 81 runic wild boars had raised Yellow and Wu Wei's levels. As Wu Wei enjoyed solo experience, he quickly reached level 10. Now, he just had to carve another core rune to ascend to a tier 1 runic summoner. Secondly, in terms of training, during these 5 days, Wu Wei had trained whenever there was time. Initially, he could only unleash 4 slashes at a time, but now, he could perform up to 10 consecutive slashes. Wu Wei's physical level had increased by a large margin, and in the process, he had lost a lot of weight. However, Wu Wei's improvement was insignificant when compared to Yellow's. 5 days ago, Yellow could only perform 32 consecutive slashes. Now, he was able to perform 108 slashes in one go. Yellow's chest muscles were now well defined. In the training process, Yellow had already completed 4,788 out of the 5,000 required slashes. The reason why he was able to complete so many slashes was that Wu Wei had not left Runic World at all in these 5 days. There were many differences between Runic World and the real world, such as the difference in spiritual energy. Back in the real world, in the academy, the level of spiritual energy in the air was much denser than in ordinary places. However, it still paled in comparison to Runic World. In the real world, when Yellow's strength was depleted, it would take 5 to 6 hours for him to fully recover. In Runic World, however, Yellow only needed 2 to 3 hours. Hence, Yellow had basically been training every 2 to 3 hours, which was why he could complete 4,788 slashes in 5 days, and his body had improved so much. However, Wu Wei still felt that this level of improvement was not enough. Today was already the 6th day that Wu Wei had been farming solo. The rations and water he had brought with him were almost used up, and even the materials he had earned from here were being depleted quickly. At this rate, he would only be able to stay for another day at most before having to head back to replenish supplies. Hence, Wu Wei set a small goal for himself today. 5,000/5,000. That's right, finishing the condition of hunting runic wild boars 5,000 times. Wu Wei sought to round up his solo trip with the accomplishment of this small goal. As for the 100/100 condition, Wu Wei decided to put it aside for now. There was not much he could do about it since he had used up all his resources and did not have any medicinal dregs left. Without supplies, Wu Wei could not guarantee that he would be able to succeed. Hence, it was better to play it safe. However, things did not always go as planned. Just as Wu Wei was about to complete the 5000/5000 condition and return, he suddenly spotted an earth yellow figure forming outside the crevice. A monster was respawning. Although Wu Wei was not surprised at first, as monsters respawning was a common sight, he soon became dumbfounded. The figure that was spawning kept growing and growing, and in no time, it had reached a height of more than 2 meters tall. Could it be that the boss has respawned? Just as Wu Wei wondered aloud, the monster fully spawned. It was 2 meters tall, 4 meters long, and had a mysterious rune marking on its head. It was none other than the wild boar king that Wu Wei had previously hunted with his former team. What the f***ck? Seeing that what had spawned right in front of him was a wild boar king, Wu Wei whipped out his book of runes without a second word and pressed log out. What was happening was no joke to Wu Wei. With the wild boar king just outside, there was no way Wu Wei would be able to leave the crevice. What else could he do but escape? Back in the real world, within the dormitory building of Yuehua Academy, Wu Wei had just returned from Runic World and was still cursing and swearing when the phone in his dorm rang promptly. The sudden call startled Wu Wei. After all, he was not part of many social circles. Originally, Zhou Hong and the others might have called looking for him, but now that he had been kicked out of the team, Wu Wei was stunned by the sudden ringing of the phone. After a short daze, Wu Wei finally picked up the phone. Hello. Who is this? Is this student Wu Wei? A girl's voice sounded from the other end of the phone. I am a member of Yuehua Academy's Moonlight Organization. My name is Lu Xiaoyu. What Wu Wei heard only served to add to his confusion. Moonlight Organization essentially served as a law enforcement department within Yuehua Academy. Why would they suddenly contact him when he had nothing to do with them? Could it be that someone noticed him observing the black-robed stall owner for a while and thought he was a stalker? Wu Wei instantly became flustered. Upon hearing no response for a long time, the girl on the other end of the phone asked, Student Wu Wei, are you listening? I'm listening, I'm listening. Is there something wrong? It's like this, we want to clarify some things regarding Team 8911 with you. It wasn't about the black-robed stall owner. Wu Wei let out a sigh of relief, but shortly after, he frowned. Team 8911? What happened to them? Did they sue me? No. Wu Wei was stunned by what he heard next. They might have been wiped out. Chapter 9. 009 Condition 2 Fulfilled. Wu Wei talked with Lu Xiaoyu for over 20 minutes. She learned about the relationship between Wu Wei and Zhou Hong's squad and why Wu Wei left the squad. She also learned about Wu Wei's movements over the past few days. Wu Wei was thoroughly questioned. It was not that Lu Xiaoyu suspected Wu Wei of being behind Zhou Hong's team's wipeout. She was simply following the standard procedures of Moonlight Organization. Wu Wei's team had indeed been very insignificant. They weren't just doing poorly, they ranked at the bottom in the academy. Nonetheless, they were still rune masters. And the country of Dahan places a lot of importance on rune masters. Every rune master had to be officially registered. In Dahan, all deaths concerning rune masters were investigated regardless of whether they were accidents. Hence, even team wipes of small teams were thoroughly investigated. As the enforcement agency of Yuehua Academy, Moonlight Organization was in charge of assisting the Dahan government in investigating and providing whatever information the government needed. Questioning Wu Wei was just part of the procedure. When faced with such questioning, Wu Wei did skimp on the details. He properly explained how he had fallen out with his former team and what he had been doing in the past few days. Other than his cheat, he hid nothing else. He even provided information as to when Team 8911 could have left Wild Boar Valley, such as the direction they were heading. From Lu Xiaoyu's questioning, Wu Wei also roughly learned about the general situation and circumstances behind Zhou Hong and the others' supposed wipeout. Actually, it was still too soon to say for sure if they were really wiped out or not. What had happened was that the school suddenly received a distress call from them, but the call lasted only about 10 seconds before the signal was cut off. After that, they lost all contact with Team 8911. As of the present, more than 10 hours had passed since the incident, and Team 8911 had yet to return. It was under this time frame that Lu Xiaoyu brought up the likelihood that they could have been wiped out. After the lengthy questioning, Wu Wei remained silent for a very long time. Frankly speaking, he did not have a good relationship with Zhou Hong and the others. However, they had been in a team for 2 months, after all, and so were at least acquaintances. It was quite a shock for Wu Wei to suddenly hear that people related to him could have died. As for Lu Xiaoyu, when she discerned that Wu Wei was in low spirits, she comforted him. Actually, you don't have to worry too much. They might not really be wiped out anyway. After all, since they are not level 10 yet, it would still be easy for them to return to the real world. They should still be in an area near Maple Leaf Town, so there won't be any monsters that can instantly kill them. Maybe they just encountered some special circumstances. Alright, thank you for your cooperation. In addition, I'll also report to the school about your current teamless situation. Hopefully, it can be arranged for you to join another team as soon as possible. It wasn't hard to tell that this young lady's attitude towards Wu Wei changed considerably after she found out about Wu Wei's situation. When Wu Wei heard what she said, he subconsciously opened his mouth to voice his true thoughts, but, in the end, he only replied, "Thank you. No need to thank me. You've been working hard for the past few days. Rest well." Lu Xiaoyu then ended the call. From Wu Wei's perspective, he wasn't exactly delighted that the other party was proceeding to find a team for him. One reason was that after the incident with Team 8911, Wu Wei had become quite averse to joining a team. Another is that he knew very well how hard it was for a low-level runic summoner to find a party. As he reckoned that this matter would not be quickly settled, Wu Wei chose not to worry about it. He then began to compose himself and focus on his current situation. Now, a boss has spawned outside the crevice in Runic World. In Runic World, if no one were to hunt a monster, it would simply continue to remain within the area it spawned. In other words, if I don't get rid of it, I won't be able to leave the crevice. In that case, I have to consider how to get rid of this big guy. Unfortunately, Wu Wei couldn't confront such a big monster head-on. Hence, Wu Wei immediately thought of the black-robed stall owner. The medicinal dregs were Wu Wei's only chance. Alright? Let's go see the black-robed stall owner. Having said that, Wu Wei immediately got up and left the dormitory. However, after Wu Wei left the dormitory, he did not go straight to the trading market. Instead, he chose to go to the training field and entered a small room, where he summoned Yellow to have him practice the boar slaughtering slash. Initially, Wu Wei wanted to complete this condition in Runic World. However, because of the boss' sudden respawn, he had no choice but to give up on the idea. Yellow's boar slaughtering slash had already reached a count of 4,788, so there were only about 200 more. If things went smoothly, he could complete the condition after another 2 sessions. Wu Wei was proven right as Yellow performed 128 slashes in a row, breaking his previous record. The count was now at 4,916. Yellow was just short of 84 more slashes. Now that he was back in the real world, Yellow would take 6 hours to recover his physical energy and practice again. Wu Wei did some calculations. A training room for one person costs about $150 an hour, so the cost for 6 hours would be the equivalent to $900 or 1 runic stone. After thinking for a moment, Wu Wei decided to take a gamble. He took out the runic pill he had acquired from the black-robed stall owner 5 days ago and gave it to Yellow. Runic pills had 2 main effects. replenishing spiritual energy and increasing the spiritual energy limit. This applied to either the rune master or their summon. There were several methods for rune masters to increase their spiritual energy limit. The first way was to level up, the second way was to consume pills, and the third way was to cultivate. Leveling up was the easiest and most convenient of the three methods, followed by consuming pills. Hence, Wu Wei had Yellow consume the runic pill, replenishing his spiritual energy instantly and raising the maximum amount of his spiritual energy by about 5%. Suddenly, a line of numbers appeared in front of Wu Wei's eyes again. 1/10. Wu Wei made a mental note and continued watching over Yellow's training. With his spiritual energy replenished, Yellow could complete the remaining 84 slashes very quickly. Just as he completed the final slash, Yellow suddenly froze up, and his muscles seemed to start spasming. At the same time, two lines of words appeared in front of Wu Wei's eyes. Your core rune summon has completed boar slaughtering / 5,000 times, becoming stronger and learning boar slaughtering / 5,000 / 5,000 condition 2 has been fulfilled. Your core rune has fulfilled 2 rank up conditions, and you can now raise its grade. Will you upgrade? Y/N. PS, the number of conditions fulfilled before upgrading is directly proportional to the rank of the core rune after the upgrade. PSS, after the upgrade, the rest of the upgrade conditions will be reset. Upon reading the words that suddenly appeared, Wu Wei became dumbfounded. Chapter 10. 010 High-quality medicinal dregs. Although Wu Wei knew there would be some kind of surprise upon clearing the 5,000 boar slaughtering slashes condition, he did not expect this. Not only did Yellow directly acquire the boar slaughtering slash, even his physical strength increased. Furthermore, he actually fulfilled the conditions for upgrading his grade. What did this mean? It meant that if Wu Wei so wanted, he could raise Yellow's grade with just a single tap of his finger right now. At this moment, Wu Wei was scarcely able to hold back his own finger from pressing down. Fortunately, Wu Wei had not missed out on the P.S at the bottom. Does this mean that if I let Yellow advance now, the grade will differ than if I have him fulfill the conditions first? And suppose I just press upgrade now without caring? In that case, the runic pill and boar hunting conditions will both be rendered invalid. Although his cheat had never been explained to him, Wu Wei felt that would be the case. And if that were to be true, Wu Wei could not allow Yellow to advance. After all, Wu Wei felt that he would be able to quickly complete these two conditions. A bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. However, a method to catch more birds would naturally be even better if it existed. Hence, Wu Wei quickly made up his mind. Yeah, time to look for Brother Blackrobe. Marketplace, Yuehua Academy. Back to the same corner, in front of the same stall. Wu Wei grinned at the black-robed stall owner in front of him. The black-robed stall owner seemed to remember Wu Wei. What's the matter? I've acquired some loot from hunting monsters in the runic world the past few days. I'll give some to you as a return gift for those medicinal dregs. As Wu Wei spoke, he took out 2 transparent spheres of light from his book of runes and handed them to the stall owner. A wild boar rib and a wild boar trotter. The black-robed stall owner had not expected this and was a little flustered, not knowing what to write on the sign in reply. If you see me as a friend, you are not allowed to refuse. The black-robed stall owner was flabbergasted. Who was your friend, now? If that was the case, then rejecting would be fine, right? Just as the black-robed stall owner was seriously contemplating what to do, Wu Wei took out his book of runes and began carving a rune he handed over. Also, this is for you too. What is this? The black-robed stall owner finally raised the sign. This contains the process of hunting runic monsters with your medicinal dregs. Your medicinal dregs are quite useful. For levels 10 and under, not even elite runic monsters can withstand it. Its main effects are causing monsters to have diarrhea, dizziness, and lose strength in their limbs. It's a pretty good poison. You should start selling it. The amount you gave me before in the bottle should be worth around 5 to 20 runic stones. Wu Wei had not once of taking the black-robed stall owner's things for free. For this reason, he had specially used the Book of Runes to record the process of using the medicinal dregs. It could be used as a video advertisement when selling. The black-stalled owner was once again overcome with surprise and wrote 6 words down after a moment of uncertainty. Thanks, you are a good person. Wu Wei rubbed his nose, thinking that the black-robed stall owner's vocabulary was lacking regarding compliments. Those who understood him would know that he was giving a genuine compliment, but those who did not might even think that he was just being dismissive. It made things feel a little awkward. However, that was not important to Wu Wei. What was important was what he planned to do next. Do you have any other medicinal dregs? Wu Wei got to the main point. The black-robed stall owner thought for a moment before taking out 2 pouches. Wu Wei scanned the pouches, and their attribute windows appeared before him. Description: medicinal dregs that came about as a byproduct in the making of runic pills. Although it doesn't look very appetizing and has strong side effects upon consumption, such as causing diarrhea accompanied by intense headache for a few hours, it can be used to temper one's spiritual power and body. Description: make no mistake, this is poison. If consumed below level 15 and without poison resistance, you will die a painful death. After checking out the 2 pouches of medicinal dregs, Wu Wei looked back at the black-robed stall owner. The difference was that he now saw the stall owner completely differently. Wu Wei had checked the properties of the medicinal pills on the black-robed man's stall before, and it could only be said that they were, at best, average. In fact, their quality was much worse than what other stalls sold. He did not expect the black-robed stall owner who sold such poor medicinal pills to have such good medicinal dregs. These were, in fact, high-quality goods, and Wu Wei even felt a little embarrassed to ask for them. After mulling over it for a while, Wu Wei finally spoke. Can I take a little bit of both to test out? Don't worry. I will definitely record the process for you. They might even become a hot-selling product if the effect is good. I'll give them all to you. Wu Wei knew that the black-robed stall owner was gullible, but he did not expect things to be so easy. Obtaining both pouches of medicinal dregs made Wu Wei so thrilled that he almost pounced on top of the stall owner. However, when he considered that the stall owner should be a man, he resisted the urge to do so. In the heat of the moment, he suddenly blurted out that he wanted to purchase 10 runic pills on credit. Wu Wei realized he had gone overboard when the words left his mouth. He had already gotten the medicinal dregs for free, and now he wanted to purchase runic pills on credit. 10, at that. When the black-robed stall owner fell into silence upon hearing the request. Seeing this, Wu Wei felt that he had ruined it. After all, even the gullible black-robed stall owner would not be stupid enough to open a tab for a stranger. However, what Wu Wei did not expect was that the black-robed stall owner actually took out 2 bottles of runic pills and handed them to Wu Wei. You really will give it to me on credit? At this moment, Wu Wei was somewhat in disbelief. Aren't you afraid I won't return it to you? The black-robed stall owner shook their head and started to write on the sign. You're a good person. You won't lie to me. At this moment, Wu Wei had mixed feelings. Thank you. What's your runic ID? Let's add each other as friends. Once I have the money, I'll return it to you immediately. In the academy, runic I.D.S were tied to the student's student ID and real name. Getting a hold of the other party's information was naturally beneficial for the creditor. Yet, the stall owner fell silent for a long time, seemingly reluctant to disclose. After a long while, the black-robed stall owner finally relented and wrote their runic ID on the sign. Wu Wei added him immediately and noticed the black-robed stall owner's avatar was a picture of the pitch-black night sky, and their nickname was an alchemist who is striving to be the best. What an exemplary comrade with lofty ambitions. Not long after adding the black-robed stall owner, Wu Wei left. He had to quickly go and earn money to pay back the money he owed. Chapter 11. 011 Hunting the Wild Boar King. It was morning when Wu Wei had returned to the real world. After replenishing supplies and making other preparations, Wu Wei returned to Runic World at night. Upon returning, Wu Wei immediately checked the situation outside the crevice. As expected, the boss, Wild Boar King, was still wandering in the area. Also, it seemed like no one else had come to Wild Boar Valley today, or they would have hunted it. This was both good news and bad news for Wu Wei. The bad news was that he had no choice but to face the Wild Boar King. The good news was that he had a chance to hunt it. Please, heaven and earth, give me your protection. I hope Brother Blackrobe's medicinal dregs will work. Whether I can hunt this Wild Boar King depends on whether they work or not. After a moment of prayer, Wu Wei began to take action. He took out a large pot of food that he had mixed with the medicinal dregs in the real world and carefully placed some food outside the crevice. Throughout the whole process, Wu Wei did not dare to take his eyes off the Wild Boar King, in case it noticed him. Fortunately, the Wild Boar King was far from his position, and Wu Wei had been careful enough. Hence, he was not discovered. After putting down the food, Wu Wei returned to the crevice. Then, he took out a handful of stones and began throwing them at the food. Pa! A stone hit the side of the food dish, and the Wild Boar King, lying on the ground sleeping, woke up startled. As it turned around to check the source of the disturbance, a gust of wind blew towards the Wild Boar King, carrying with it the fragrance of the food. Upon smelling it, the Wild Boar King's eyes instantly lit up, and it got up and started walking in the direction of the smell. Drooling, it soon discovered the food. Seeing this, Wu Wei started to become excited. However, when he thought the Wild Boar King was about to fall for it, it suddenly stopped. Even though there was so much drool from its mouth, it did not start eating the food. Instead, it looked around to check its surroundings. From the gleam in its eyes, one could tell that it was not just a regular runic wild boar, it clearly possessed intelligence. Sure enough, its attention fell upon where Wu Wei was hiding. With a huff and a puff, the Wild Boar King charged over to the crevice and glared inside. From within the cave, the opening of the crevice was blocked by one monstrous eye. However, the Wild Boar King wasn't able to spot anything. As soon as it had begun charging, Wu Wei, who had realized that the situation was turning bad, had already taken out his book of runes to log out. Wu Wei's current strength was only at level 10. He had yet to inscribe his second core rune to reach level 11. At this moment, he was not even at tier 1 yet. Although his strength was weak, he had one advantage: he could freely enter and exit Runic World without restriction. Hence, Wu Wei was able to escape in an instant. If he had already been level 11, logging out would take over 10 seconds. Because he still lacked the strength, Wu Wei chose not to expose his presence to the Wild Boar King yet. The Wild Boar King's intelligence was not to be underestimated. It was at least at the level of a 10-year-old child. Yet, no matter how smart it was, it would still covet that delicious-smelling food. Upon finding nothing in the crevice, the Wild Boar King had walked away snorting. 10 minutes later, when Wu Wei returned to Runic World again, what he saw left him dumbstruck. He saw that the Wild Boar King had brought along an elite runic wild boar from heaven knows where and was currently forcing the elite runic wild boar to eat the food. At this moment, Wu Wei was utterly stunned. No way, a level 10 boss is already so smart. In the future, how strong will the runic monsters I face be? For now, Wu Wei was not worried that his plan would be exposed. He knew that the elite monster would be fine. After the elite monster took a chomp of the food under the Wild Boar King's coercion, the Wild Boar King shoved the elite monster aside and observed it. It observed it for an entire 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, the elite runic wild boar was completely fine and even showed signs of trying to make an escape. Having confirmed that there was nothing wrong with the food, the wild boar king impaled the elite monster on the spot with an earth spike. After that, the wild boar king ran towards the food and began to dig in. It ate happily and quickly finished everything up. However, as soon as it finished eating, its stomach began to churn. Soon, an intense pain began to spread throughout the wild boar king's entire body, causing the wild boar king to let out a miserable shriek. No matter how hard it tried, it could not understand how the elite monster could still be fine after eating the food but not itself. It did not know that Wu Wei had not thoroughly mixed the medicinal dregs and the dishes together. Only the bottom layer had been mixed with the medicinal dregs, so the top layer was uncontaminated. Therefore, while the elite monster was fine after eating a bit on top, the wild boar king, who ate everything, would not be. The intense pain sent the wild boar king into a frenzy. It began to charge around and ram into the rocks, even spamming earth spike continuously, as if trying to do whatever it could to relieve its pain. However, it was useless. As it struggled, the poison flowed through its body even faster, and after more than 10 minutes, the wild boar king had collapsed to the ground gasping for air. Upon seeing this, Wu Wei's eyebrows narrowed. He took out the wild boar king crossbow and slowly stretched out of the crevice to aim at the wild boar king. With a tremendous swoosh, the crossbow bolt pierced through the wild boar king's body. There was barely any reaction apart from a slight shudder of its body. Clearly, it was at death's door. Seeing this, Wu Wei summoned Yellow to finish the job. However, as Yellow approached the wild boar king with his sword, an earth spike shot out from the ground. At the same time, the wild boar king that had appeared to be on its last breath suddenly got up and charged toward Yellow. The wild boar king's intelligence and acting skills were indeed praiseworthy. Nonetheless, it was futile. Wu Wei had remained cautious, so the moment the wild boar king got up, he summoned Yellow back, causing the wild boar king to miss. Having made its last spurt in vain, the wild boar king's final remnants of physical and spiritual energy were utterly depleted. Still, Wu Wei continued to wait in anticipation for another 20 minutes, upon which he fired the crossbow once more at the wild boar king. This shot finished the wild boar king. With a loud poof, the wild boar king died, and 2 transparent drops appeared. This number of drops was the same as the wild boar king hunt with his former team. The only difference was that this time, Wu Wei had taken down the wild boar king by himself. With the wild boar king's death, the runic wild boar kill count jumped to 96/100. Only 4 were left, and Wu Wei was delighted to find that the elite monster from before was still alive in its last breaths. Wu Wei waved his hand, and Yellow headed over with the wild boar sword. With a slash, the elite monster died, dropping 2 transparent drops. At the same time, the kill count reached 101/100. Chapter 12. 012 Yellow's Advancement. Runic World, within a crack between the rocks in Wild Boar Valley. In this small space, Wu Wei and Yellow sat opposite each other. Looking at the 6 glowing drops in front of him, Wu Wei's expression was full of excitement. As for Yellow, he was only common grade, so he had even less intelligence than a runic wild boar and could not share Wu Wei's happiness. He wouldn't even understand what happiness was. O great gods, bestow upon me your blessings. O supreme book of runes, O brother Blackrobe, bless me. Wu Wei prayed for a moment before opening the drops one by one. Although he didn't need to open them to know what was inside, Wu Wei still enjoyed the process. It made things more exciting. As the spheres of lights revealed themselves, lines of words appeared before Wu Wei's eyes. You have opened a common drop and obtained 1x superior wild boar special meat. You have opened a common drop and obtained 1x runic armament, wild boar necklace. You have opened a common drop and obtained 1x superior wild boar kidney. You have opened an uncommon drop and obtained 1x rune, earth spike. You have opened an uncommon drop and obtained 1x high quality wild boar king heart. Wu Wei had acquired some interesting wild boar body parts among these 6 drops. When Wu Wei took a look at the properties of the special meat, it wrote, "A great tonic with miraculous effects in treating kidney deficiency. Can revive one's masculinity." Although it was a good item, Wu Wei did not need it. He was full of vigor, so there was no deficiency to treat. However, he still put them away with care. He might not have needed them, but he felt they could be sold for a high price. After that, Wu Wei squinted to inspect the remaining 3 items. He almost had to squint to the point of closing his eyes when the attribute windows of the 3 items finally appeared. Type. Equipment requirement, S. Equipment effect, increases the efficiency of cultivation by 50%. PS, it only works on those level 10 and below. 3/3. Inscription condition. Description, can be eaten directly. Eating it raw will strengthen the body. Limited to stage 1 and below. PS, you can also try to turn this into a dish. It will be more delicious, and the effect will also be better. Looking at the 3 items, Wu Wei felt somewhat disappointed. They were all good items but not as good as the wild boar sword. Wu Wei was now level 10, so the wild boar necklace was not useful to him. According to his estimations, it should fetch him around at least 20 runic stones, possibly up to 40. The earth spike rune, however, was worth at least 50 runic stones. Of course, Wu Wei could keep it as a method of attacking. But that would be silly of him. To sell it for 50 runic stones or keep it to use only 3 times was an easy decision. As for the last item, Wild Boar King's Heart, Wu Wei thought he should hold on to it. All of the drops add up to just over 100 runic stones. That's alright, I guess. Finished with his inspection, Wu Wei stored all the items and then turned towards Yellow. At this moment, Yellow's attribute window had drastically changed. Yellow. Master. Advancement available, 3 conditions fulfilled. Runic armament, Wild Boar Sword. Skills, Boar Slaughtering / There was an advancement available line after its quality. At present, Yellow has already fulfilled 3 conditions to advance. On top of these 3 conditions, the 4th condition could soon be fulfilled. However, Wu Wei did not prepare to do it in Runic World. While in Runic World, always maintain absolute vigilance. This was Wu Wei's principle. Wu Wei did not know what changes would happen to Yellow after advancement. Suppose the advancement caused a big commotion and drew the attention of monsters, even if Wu Wei could escape by himself. In that case, Yellow may not be able to. Therefore, it was better to return to the real world to perform the advancement. In the real world, the worst outcome would be if someone found out about his advancement. However, it was not as if such a thing had never happened before, so it was not a big deal. Moreover, as Dahan enforced Rune Master laws strictly, Wu Wei was not worried about having his advancement exposed. Comparing the worst outcome for both sides, Wu Wei naturally chose to return to the real world to advance. After returning to the real world, Wu Wei resummoned Yellow in his dorm. Then, he took out the 2 bottles of runic pills that he had gotten from the black-robed stall owner and had Yellow consume them. After the first runic pill entered his mouth, a number appeared in front of Wu Wei. What? Didn't he already consume one before? Or is it that the same type of medicine can't be used? Or do I have to attempt the condition in one shot? Wu Wei's eyes narrowed. After thinking things through, he ordered Yellow to pick up speed. In one shot, Yellow emptied both bottles of pills. 10/10. Condition 4 fulfilled. Do you want to advance? Y/N. 59:59/60:00. It really was time restricted. After seeing the 3 lines of words flash, Wu Wei decided to perform the advancement without hesitation. He opened Yellow's attribute window and selected Advance. As Wu Wei clicked on Advance, yellow began to dissipate into glowing particles of light that flashed brightly before flowing into Wu Wei. The light entered Wu Wei's forehead to return to the Book of Runes. When yellow returned, Wu Wei felt the Book of Runes begin to heat up. The feverish feeling made Wu Wei drowsy. Although he tried to hold out for a while, Wu Wei collapsed after a few minutes of struggling and fell into a state of slumber. Wu Wei slept for a few hours. When he woke up, Wu Wei felt as if his body had just been freed from heavy shackles and felt extremely light-footed. What's going on? Wu Wei subconsciously began to move and test out his body, but when he saw his raised hand, Wu Wei was thunderstruck. Whose hand is this? My hand can't be so thin, fair, and slender. Could it be? Wu Wei seemed to realize something, so he quickly ran to the toilet and turned on the lights. Ah, it's so bright. The light was blinding, but what was more striking was Wu Wei's changed appearance. All hints of Wu Wei's past chubbiness had disappeared. What was reflected in the mirror was a handsome man with fair skin and a chiseled face. He was as handsome as the readers. Even in his wildest dreams, Wu Wei never expected that advancing yellow would conveniently bring him such a massive makeover. Although I knew from the beginning that I had the potential and would look good if I slimmed down, isn't it a little too much for me to be this good looking? I didn't expect to become this handsome. I just wanted to upgrade yellow. Oh right, yellow. Reminded of yellow, Wu Wei waved his hand to resummon him. Chapter 13. 013 Yellow Turban Strongman. Translator Dragon Boat Translation Editor Dragon Boat Translation. Yuehua Academy, Dormitory Building, Room 666. With a wave of Wu Wei's hand, an unfamiliar figure appeared in front of him. Before the advancement, Yellow's height was about the same as Wu Wei's, less than 1.8 meters. After the advancement, Yellow's height had directly soared to around 2 meters, and his figure had also become much sturdier. The clothes he was wearing had also changed. While he had initially worn a shirt, he was now shirtless. He was dressed in a pair of beige pants and a scarf on his head. And there were even some mysterious patterns on his upper body. Coupled with the boar-slaughtering sword in his hand, if one just looked at his body, he gave off a solid and fierce aura. However, if you were to include his face, this aura would be cut in at least half. Although he had a brute-like face that was fierce and ugly, his eyes were blank and innocent, giving people the impression of a husky in a pack of wolves. Amazed, Wu Wei pulled up Yellow's current stat window. Name, Yellow Turban Strongman, Yellow. Equipment, Boar Slaughtering Sword. Attributes, Strength, 1, Stamina, 1.1. Other attributes are substandard and will not be displayed. Skills, Boar Slaughtering / Yellow Turban Strength. Its grade has been upgraded to rare, and it even awakened a skill. Looks like Yellow is getting stronger. But what's with this low amount of strength and stamina? Wu Wei patted Yellow's chest and arms that now seemed powerful enough to crush a skull. He could feel an explosive power contained within Yellow's muscles. Why, then, was his strength stat so low? Let's go to the training ground and test things out. Unable to hold back his curiosity, Wu Wei took a shower before heading out. When he left the dorm, Wu Wei realized that the sky was still dark. Looking at the time, it was only about 5 o'clock in the morning. The training ground definitely was not open yet. It usually did not open until 7 a.m., the earliest. Wu Wei thought for a moment before heading to the canteen. When he arrived at the canteen that was always open, Wu Wei went straight to the kitchen. Who let you in? Get out, get out, get out. Wu Wei had only just entered when he was almost pushed out by the chef in the kitchen. I have high-quality ingredients that I want to use. After Wu Wei spoke, he took out the wild boar king's heart. When he saw what Wu Wei brought out, the master who had just been chasing Wu Wei out immediately became amicable. Wow, a high-quality boar heart. Although it's not that special, I can make a lot of dishes with it. I'll make you some pig's heart soup to nourish your body. Your body is so small. Drinking a bowl will at least strengthen your body by 30%. The master had been patting Wu Wei's shoulder non-stop as he spoke, causing half of Wu Wei's body to numb. Thank you. How much will it cost? In terms of money, 20 runic stones. Wu Wei was shocked. Thankfully, the chef offered an alternative. Well, you don't have to pay up. I'll make it for you in exchange for a third of the portion to the canteen. Wu Wei thought about it and accepted the proposal. He had no choice, he had no money. The master operated quickly. In about an hour, he had finished making the pig's heart soup for Wu Wei. Wu Wei looked at it. Although 1/3 of it had been left by the canteen, more than 6 liters were still left. He definitely would not be able to finish it all by himself. After a moment of pondering, Wu Wei asked the master to pack up 11 portions, after which there was still a big bowl left. After Wu Wei had stored the packed portions, he slurped up the big bowl of soup as he ate 5 big steamed buns. These steamed buns were made with a special kind of flour. Not only were they rich in taste, but they also carried spiritual energy. Usually, as 5 of them cost 1 runic stone, Wu Wei would not be willing to splurge. And he indeed had not. Wu Wei had acquired these buns by pleading with the chef. As he usually only ate 1, that was all he was hoping for. But when Wu Wei heard the chef say that he could eat as much as he wanted, he happily obliged. Wu Wei downed 5 in one go together with the big bowl of pig heart soup. It was strange. Wu Wei usually would not eat this much, but after eating so much today, he still felt that he wasn't very full. He even wanted to eat more. But faced with the chef's murderous gaze, Wu Wei could only, very reluctantly, leave. Before he left, Wu Wei sold the special meat and the pair of kidneys to the chef. When Wu Wei had casually brought them up earlier to try and sell to the chef, he had received an unexpectedly enthusiastic response. The chef had offered 20 runic stones on the spot. As it was a reasonable sum to Wu Wei, he did not bargain with the chef and sold it there and then. After leaving the canteen, Wu Wei went to the trading market again. This time, he did not go to the stalls. As it was still early, there were barely any stalls aside from the regular shops. Wu Wei went into a random shop and sold the wild boar necklace and the earth spike rune. The necklace fetched him 35 runic stones, while the earth spike rune fetched him 48 runic stones. Right now, the number of runic stones inside Wu Wei's pocket had soared to 114. Even after deducting the black-robed stall owner's 50 runic stones, Wu Wei still had 64 to spare. This was a considerable sum of money, and Wu Wei, who had never been this rich, was ecstatic. In his excitement, Wu Wei began to plan how to spend his money. I'm already level 10 now. I have to consider inscribing my second core rune. Otherwise, my level won't go up, and I'll be wasting any experience gained, just like with the wild boar king from before. When he thought about his second core rune, Wu Wei's brain began to hurt. Inscribing core runes was a rather expensive affair. Take the earth spike rune that Wu Wei had just sold, for example. The conditions for inscribing this rune were tailored toward runic mages. It wasn't that only runic mages could inscribe it, but that the requirements would otherwise be difficult to fulfill. And even then, not even a runic mage could guarantee successfully inscribing it in their first attempt. It would typically take 2 or 3 tries, and each attempt required an extra earth spike rune. In other words, for a runic mage to inscribe earth spike as his first core rune would take an average of 150 runic stones. Although the inscribing costs for a runic mage were higher, it was far worse for a runic summoner like Wu Wei. Firstly, the runes required by a runic summoner were relatively expensive. Secondly, the failure rate of inscribing them was also higher. If a runic summoner wanted to inscribe better core runes, it would be an impossible task without 300 to 500 runic stones. When he thought of this amount of money, Wu Wei's head started hurting. He had tried to think his way around this before. What if I inscribe another yellow turban soldier as my second core rune and then upgrade him to a yellow turban strongman too? Since I now know how to upgrade a yellow turban soldier, it would be a cost-effective way to acquire a second rare summon. When this idea popped up in his head, Wu Wei had gotten hopeful. However, in the end, he could only give up. Although it was a good plan, Yellow Turban Soldier was only a level 1 rune. For his second core rune, he would need a level 10 rune, so it wouldn't work out. Chapter 14 014 A Pleasant Surprise. Afterward, Wu Wei browsed through the other shops in the trading market on his way to the Academy-run Runic shop. The Academy-run Runic shop had many welfare perks for student customers. Not only was the price lower, but the quality of the goods was also generally satisfactory. As Wu Wei needed runes now, the first place that came to mind was naturally the Academy's Runic shop. I need to take a look at level 10 summoning runes. Once he entered the rune shop, Wu Wei went straight to the counter. The salesperson in the shop was obviously a part-time student as well. She was a good-looking young lady with a pleasant personality. And this was more evident than usual. In the past, when Wu Wei came, she would only wear a polite and professional smile, but when she saw Wu Wei today, her smile was extremely lovely. She enthusiastically brought Wu Wei to the level 10 summoning rune shelf. The level 10 summoning runes are all here. Is this all? Wu Wei looked at the shelf in front of him that was obviously smaller than the other shelves. Then, he noticed that the shelf was not very stocked up, causing him to frown slightly. As you know, customer, summoning runes are not produced as much as other runes, so the quantity is low. However, the quality will still be good. There are even uncommon summoning runes among them. For example, this Goblin Warrior is pretty good. It's an uncommon summoning rune that only costs 198 runic stones. Although the young lady promoted passionately, Wu Wei did not have much enthusiasm for the Goblin Warrior. On the one hand, he felt that this summon would not be as good as his Yellow Turban Strongman. On the other hand, the price of 198 runic stones was too costly. Right now, he only had about 60 runic stones to spare. However, since the lady took the initiative to hand it over for examination, Wu Wei subconsciously picked it up. At the same time that Wu Wei took the rune, the attribute window appeared in front of Wu Wei's eyes. Rune 1 advancement condition known. Description: Other than the fact that this Goblin Warrior does not have very impressive combat strength and is prone to committing dishonorable actions such as running away in cowardice once in a while, he's not that bad. Upon seeing the text on the window, Wu Wei's eyes narrowed. Focusing on 1 advancement condition known, Wu Wei subconsciously clicked on it, and a line of words appeared. Condition 1, 1x Goblin Warrior Rune, incomplete. This line of text almost caused Wu Wei to burst out in excitement. Frankly speaking, although he had successfully advanced Yellow to a Yellow Turban Strongman, he still did not have much confidence in his cheat. He had not known if this cheat could be used on other runes. After all, he hadn't seen such signs on other runes before. But today, Wu Wei confirmed that his cheat could be used on other runes for the first time. As long as he could meet the advancement conditions, like with Yellow, he would definitely be able to level other summoning runes, such as the one in his hand. However, other concerns also popped up in Wu Wei's head. Why is there only one condition? Does it mean I cannot copy the conditions I unlocked for Yellow? Or is it just a matter of compatibility? Wu Wei decided he could only put it to this test to find an answer. Right now, Wu Wei was eager to confirm if other summoning runes, besides this Goblin Warrior, could also be advanced. With this thought in mind, Wu Wei asked his young lady to pass him the summoning runes one by one for examination. The young lady was not surprised by Wu Wei's request. After all, the inscription of runes could be said to be a matter of fate. There were frequently such hesitant rune masters who made similar requests. Therefore, Wu Wei's request was not out of the ordinary. The only thing was that he requested a larger quantity. Of course, the lady would not bother going the extra mile, whatever the request was if it were an ordinary customer. However, since she found Wu Wei's face very agreeable when she took a closer look, she accommodated and began assisting him. In no time, Wu Wei had inspected all 13 level 10 runes on the shelf. His conclusion was that all of the runes could be upgraded. When he had held each rune, he could see if there were any advancement condition, known. The sole difference was in the number of conditions. It ranged from 1 to 3. Of course, for Wu Wei, the number of revealed conditions was not important. What was important was that, to him, the grade of the rune itself bore little significance. Because no matter what grade it was, he would be able to raise it. He now enjoyed the luxury of a cost-efficient method for acquiring higher-grade runes. And because of this, Wu Wei could instead focus on the summon's actual utility. Having examined all the summoning runes, Wu Wei began to ponder. He was making a serious consideration over his second core rune. Yellow is a yellow turban strongman. He will definitely continue to be the close combat type. In that regard, I think he will be good enough. After all, I can't have both summons on the front lines. I should prioritize my own safety as well. Besides, it seems like I'll continue to remain solo from now on, so this is what I should focus on. For my second core rune, it will be optimal to choose a summoning rune that provides support and defense. Having reached this conclusion, Wu Wei recalled the attributes of the 13 runes he had inspected. Out of the 13 summoning runes, other than the Goblin Warrior, all of them were common grade runes, but this was not a problem for Wu Wei could upgrade them. Of the remaining 12 runes, however, there wasn't really anything special. The best one that matched what Wu Wei wanted was the Lesser Treant rune. 3 known advancement conditions. Price. Description: it's a Treant rune, what else is there to explain? Its attributes were extremely ordinary, or rather, way too ordinary. To put it bluntly, they were trash. Wu Wei was considering the Treant rune partly because it came with 3 known advancement conditions. Other than the condition involving the boar slaughtering slash, it could use the others. Hence, Wu Wei would only need to find one more, a 4th condition, to raise it to uncommon grade. Then, it would definitely become much stronger. Its defense was not bad, on top of having some usefulness in healing, so Wu Wei felt that it was quite suitable for his current level. However, it was just a feeling. Picking a second core rune was a matter of great importance. Hence Wu Wei would not make a decision right away. Moreover, Wu Wei felt that although it was fine, he would not be satisfied with just this. Well, guess I'll look around again. I don't want to make a decision I'll regret. Chapter 15. 015 Rune Diviner. After bidding farewell to the helpful lady who seemed reluctant to see him go, Wu Wei left the rune shop. After coming out of the rune shop, Wu Wei looked at the time and realized it was still early, just a little past 7 a.m. Wu Wei guessed that the black-robed stall owner had not set up his stall yet, so he left the market first and went to the school library. At this hour, there weren't many people in the library. Apart from the other students in groups of 2s and 3s, there were only 2 librarian administrators, also students who worked part-time. Wu Wei looked at the 2 librarians, a guy and a girl, and subconsciously approached the young man. As a frequent visitor to the library, although he wasn't that familiar with these 2 librarians, you could say that Wu Wei did know them. He knew the young lady was lazy and had a bad temper, unlike the young man who was usually friendly to him. "Brother, please help me find these books." Approaching the young man, Wu Wei pulled out a long list of books and handed it over to him. However, although he thought that the good-natured librarian would be happy to help, unexpectedly, the young man acted sourly. "Who's your brother? Can't you see that I'm busy? Do you think I'd have time to find books for you?" Think you've become handsome, huh? Before the man could finish his sentence, his face suddenly turned pale, and he took a deep breath as he squatted down, as if his foot had just been stepped on. Before Wu Wei could figure out what was going on, the young lady beside him, who usually had a bad temper, came over, and she spoke in a gentle voice. "Young brother, he's having his period today, so he's not in a good mood. I'll help you find it." As she said that, she took the long list of books from Wu Wei's hands, turned around, and squatted down. Leaning against the counter to avoid Wu Wei's gaze, she suddenly grabbed the tie of the young man beside her and handed the book list to him, fiercely ordering, "You help me look for it?" Afterward, the young lady stood up and gave Wu Wei a refreshing smile. It caused Wu Wei's hair to stand on end. Was this that very hot-tempered female librarian whom he knew before? Could it have become possessed by some runic monster from the runic world? What caused Wu Wei's hair to stand on end was that the fiery young lady in his impression in front of him was being unexpectedly warm and patient with him. She even sat down in front of Wu Wei, started to make small talk with him, forced a cup of water into his hands, and then began to make a relentlessly appeal for Wu Wei's runic ID. This was the first time Wu Wei experienced a girl's warm passion. However, Wu Wei did not enjoy the feeling at all. On the contrary, he was scared out of his wits. After a long while, the male admin finally brought over the thick stack of books that Wu Wei wanted to borrow. After confirmation, Wu Wei ran away with the books in his hand without turning back. How odd. The sight of Wu Wei running away caused the puzzled woman to narrow her eyes. The male manager's expression changed. "What? Is there a problem with him?" "Yes, it's a huge problem." The female manager's expression darkened. "He didn't give me his runic ID." "Oh, no, I mean looking at him just now, he seemed to have visited often, but I don't have any impression of him. This shouldn't be, he's so handsome. Anyway, there must be something wrong with him. Get me his personal information and runic ID. I'll teach him a good lesson." "Oh, no, I mean investigate him." After unethically obtaining Wu Wei's identity information, the female administrator searched up his runic ID and sent him a friend request. Seeing his superior act shamelessly, the male assistant finally understood her true intentions. After sending the friend request to Wu Wei, she continued holding onto her phone, refusing to let go. Her face was full of anxiety, nervousness, and anticipation. Meanwhile, on Wu Wei's end, he had just escaped from the library when his phone received a notification. He picked it up to see that it was a friend request from a girl named Lu Feiyu. Wu Wei stared dazedly at her profile picture. Wasn't she the overly enthusiastic female librarian? Feeling a shiver down his spine, he quickly put his phone away. Women are really too scary. This was the first time that Wu Wei had such an epiphany. After composing himself, Wu Wei found a quiet corner and began sorting out the books he had borrowed from the library. This time, Wu Wei had borrowed around 17 books. These were all books that Wu Wei had shortlisted recently. 1/3 of the books were related to the Yellow Turban Soldier, and another third were related to Rune Master Advancement. The remaining were related to level 10 summoning runes and general Rune Master knowledge. It was not difficult to see that Wu Wei had borrowed these books to prepare for his next move. Wu Wei's preparations mainly concerned two aspects. One was to prepare for his next rune inscription, and the second was to prepare for rune upgrading. Although Yellow had already been upgraded to a Yellow Turban Strongman, Wu Wei felt that his cheat would definitely have its own reason for selecting him, so Yellow's growth would not stop there. The quality of the runes was divided into several grades: common, uncommon, rare, superior, unique, and perfect. Although Yellow's quality had already reached rare, Wu Wei felt, or rather, hoped that Yellow would continue to become even stronger. Since he wanted to continue upgrading Yellow, Wu Wei would need to find the exact upgrade conditions. In this regard, Wu Wei felt that he could not just rely on blind luck anymore. He needed to grasp more knowledge related to the Yellow Turban Soldier. Only through attaining a level of comprehension regarding Yellow could Wu Wei could become able to upgrade him. And that was just one consideration. Another consideration was that, with the cheat starting to become useful, Wu Wei would upgrade even more core runes. This was unavoidable, so Wu Wei decided he would not try and delay it but instead take the initiative himself. His concern was that continuously upgrading his origin runes would attract the attention of others. So Wu Wei would need to come up with an explanation for his rune upgrading to convince others why his runes could level up so quickly. In this regard, Wu Wei already had some ideas. The best way was to let become a professional runic diviner. Runic diviner referred to a class of rune masters dedicated to researching runes. Their lifelong pursuit was to find out what the origin of runes was. Of course, Wu Wei wasn't interested in the origin of runes right now. He wasn't even at stage 1, so what interest would he have? What Wu Wei was interested in was the ability of a diviner to create and even upgrade the runes. Wu Wei felt this characteristic of a diviner was compatible with his cheat. He could come up with a cover for himself as a genius diviner, or at least one who specialized in upgrading the quality of runes. Such a cover would allow him to continuously upgrade his runes in the future. Moreover, it wasn't the first time Wu Wei had had such an idea. Previously, before discovering the use of his cheat, he had bitterly attempted to cultivate as a diviner for some time. Unfortunately, he had given up then due to a lack of results. Now, however, Wu Wei had both the confidence and desire. Chapter 16 016 Team 8566. When he first lost weight, Wu Wei felt it was a good thing. However, in less than a day, Wu Wei felt that losing weight and becoming too good-looking was not necessarily without its cons. While he was organizing his books, 3 young ladies had already come over to ask for his runic ID. Also, that young lady called Lu Feiyu had continued spamming him with several verification messages. Wu Wei couldn't understand how these young ladies were so free. Why didn't they go to Runic World if they were so free? If they were so free, why weren't they studying? Didn't they know that feelings were useless to rune masters? Like the appendix that does nothing but cause health issues. As expected, women are meddlesome. Brother Black Robe is the best. Oh, speaking of which, Brother Black Robe should be setting up his stall now, right? I have to go over and give him the money. Thinking of the black-robed stall owner, Wu Wei quickly stored his book inside his book of runes, filling a third of the storage space in the book. Next, Wu Wei brought out 2 thermal flasks filled with Boar King's heart soup as he approached the black-robed stall owner's stall. Wu Wei had come at a good time. The black-robed stall owner was just setting up his stall. Young man. Wu Wei went over and gave the stall owner a warm pat on the back. The black-robed stall owner was startled and almost jumped. Upon seeing that it was Wu Wei, the black-robed stall owner became even more flustered and only managed to raise the sign after fumbling for a long time. Who are you? What's the matter? Reading the words, Wu Wei was stunned for a moment before he immediately realized why and quickly reintroduced himself. It's me, Wu Wei. I've lost weight. To further prove his identity, Wu Wei even took out his phone to look for the black-robed stall owner's runic ID and sent an emoticon. Upon hearing Wu Wei's words, the black-robed stall owner took a closer look at Wu Wei's drastically changed figure and face and then glanced back at the smiley face sent by Wu Wei. The realization left the stall owner thunderstruck. Although it was not uncommon for rune masters to lose weight or grow taller overnight, it was basically unheard of for someone to undergo such a massive change. Can you call this losing weight? You clearly underwent some big operation. The black-robed stall owner needed some time to come to terms with reality, but Wu Wei was already beginning to pass over all sorts of items. Little brother, this is the 50 runic stones that I owe you. I'm returning them to you now. These 2 flasks are filled with Boar King's heart soup that can help improve your physical condition. Just look at how skinny you are. All of this is thanks to the effects of your medicinal dregs. I have to say, the effects of your dregs are truly incredible. Even a level 10 boss could not withstand it. It's all thanks to you. In just a moment, the black-robed stall owner's arms had become stuffed full of items. Looking at the quantity of the items caused the stall owner to hesitate. Wu Wei added, "Don't refuse. Refusing means you don't see me as a friend." Fortunately, the black-robed stall owner had interacted with Wu Wei a few times and so had gotten used to it. The stall owner put down the items and took out 2 jars of medicinal dregs, passing them to Wu Wei while raising a sign. "Return gift." Wu Wei did not stand on ceremony and accepted the items. "You have my thanks." The black-robed stall owner then picked up the sign and subconsciously wanted to write something like "You're a good person." However, the stall owner suddenly paused mid-writing and glanced at Wu Wei before quickly rewriting. "Don't thank me. We are friends." "Yes, we are friends. You're a great brother, and I'm a great brother too, so don't worry. Just like before, if I can figure out the use of these medicinal dregs, I will definitely inscribe it for you." The black-robed stall owner was dumbfounded. "Who's your brother?" She quickly began to write down on the sign again. "I am a girl." However, just as she was about to raise the sign, Wu Wei's phone rang, and Wu Wei's gaze shifted away from him to his phone. When he picked it up, he saw that it was an unknown number. Wu Wei casually answered the call. He thought it could be from Yu Minglu. "Are you student Wu Wei?" A deep voice spoke on the other end of the call. As soon as Wu Wei heard the voice, he had the impression of a muscular man. "I am, and you are?" "Oh, it's like this, I am the captain of Team 8566. My name is Zhou Tian. I heard from Senior Lu Xiaoyu from Moonlight Organization that you are currently without a team, right? It just so happens that our team currently lacks a runic summoner. I wonder if you're interested in joining us." Wu Wei was caught off guard for a moment. He didn't expect Lu Xiaoyu to have arranged a team for him this quickly. What should he do? He didn't really want to join someone else's team right now, but could he directly refuse? Wu Wei also felt that it wouldn't be nice to Lu Xiaoyu. After all, she had actually gone to the efforts of finding a runic summoner like him a team. This couldn't have been an easy feat. He felt it was a little too unappreciative of him to refuse just like that. As Wu Wei was hesitating, the man across from him spoke again. "I know that you might not be mentally prepared for me to ask you so suddenly. How about this? I heard from Senior Lu that you seem to be at the edge of Maple Leaf Town, right? It just so happens that we'll be going there in the next 2 days. How about we meet up in Maple Leaf Town face to face? Of course, there's no reason for you to feel burdened. Joining a team is a matter involving 2 parties. If you're not satisfied or feel it's not suitable, you can just bring it up. It's not like we have already ascertained your compatibility with the team anyway." Since he had already said so much, what could Wu Wei do? Even if he didn't want to join, he should attend the meeting first, at least. Thus, Wu Wei subconsciously nodded his head. "All right, in that case, let's meet in Maple Town." After making an appointment with Team 8566's captain, Zhou Tian, regarding the time and place of the meeting, Wu Wei started to feel weighed down and lost his chatty mood. After quickly bidding farewell to the black-robed man, he left. When the black-robed woman observed that Wu Wei wasn't in a good mood, she hurriedly changed the words on the sign to "Goodbye." At the same time, on the other side of Yuehua Academy, within the activity room of Team 8566. After Zhou Tian hung up the phone, his teammates surrounded him. "How is it?" He didn't agree at first, so he may be averse to accepting the team invite. It seems that he's still bearing scars from his experience with his previous team and is not fully ready to join a new team for the time being. One of the members beside him curled his lips. We aren't ready to accept a runic summoner either. Yeah, what our team needs more right now is support. We don't lack combat power, but we don't need some useless burden either. That's enough. Zhou Tian slammed the table. Stop whining. Senior Lu is so good to us, so we must fulfill her request. Let me warn you first. In 2 days, when we meet, you must not provoke or bully him. Another teammate, a blonde youngster, immediately replied. Don't worry, we're not that dumb. No matter what, it was Senior Lu's request. Let alone a runic summoner, even if she asked us to bring a dog along, we would not hesitate. That's just how much a favor to Senior Lu is worth. Chapter 17 017 Strange Medicine Dregs. After returning from the market, Wu Wei finished his preparations before returning to Runic World. As soon as he returned to Runic World, Wu Wei summoned Yellow. Although it had initially been Wu Wei's plan to head to the training grounds to test Yellow's current strength, he decided to do so in actual combat in Wild Boar Valley after thinking about it. Upon summoning him, Wu Wei immediately felt that Yellow had vastly changed as compared to before. Before this, Yellow had always been in a daze. When he did not have any orders, he would stand there motionlessly, and he wouldn't even blink when a mosquito landed on his eyeball. Now, however, this fellow seemed to have become much livelier. Summoned out but still not receiving instructions from his summoner, Yellow looked at Wu Wei for a while before scratching his head and rolling his eyes. He was clearly expressing his puzzlement. Yellow's behavior came as a pleasant surprise to Wu Wei. It was a testament to the growth of his consciousness. Afterward, Wu Wei tried to communicate with Yellow. He discovered that, like before, although Yellow could understand his words, he could still not speak. It wasn't that he couldn't use his voice, he simply could not speak the language. Although he could understand Wu Wei's orders, that only came about as a byproduct of the master-summoner relationship. Language was still beyond him. However, Wu Wei thought that he could slowly teach him. He felt that it might not be that difficult. After all, Yellow gave Wu Wei the impression that he had intelligence, probably around that of a 4 or 5-year-old child. This level of intelligence is more or less enough for now. Next, to find out his combat strength. I want to know what the combat power of a high-quality summon like Yellow is like. Know yourself and know the enemy. Thus, Wu Wei began his experiment by ordering Yellow to lure a runic boar over to try. In the end, it died. The runic boar did. Yellow's combat strength, which had improved grade-wise, had become terrifying. When it had still been a Yellow turban soldier, although Wu Wei didn't let Yellow fight any runic boars head-on, he had teamed up with Zhou Hong and the others in their boar hunting. Hence, Wu Wei was clear that Yellow's level of strength at that time was slightly inferior to a runic wild boar of the same level. The runic wild boar was a monster with high attack and high defense. With Yellow's attack power from before, even a full-strength attack would not be able to do anything to the runic wild boar. Wu Wei was sure that Yellow would definitely lose if it were a one-on-one fight. But now, Yellow's grade had jumped to the level of an uncommon monster, and the corresponding increase in combat power was impressive. With the wild boar sword in hand, one casual slash of Yellow's and a level 10 runic wild boar's head was sent flying. What terrifying attack power! Following that, Wu Wei had Yellow lure a few runic wild boars over a few more times to test his abilities. In the end, Wu Wei concluded that Yellow's strength and agility had increased significantly after his advancement. In terms of raw physical strength alone, he did not lose out to runic wild boars. And in actual combat, Yellow could easily suppress one. Wu Wei felt that the current Yellow wouldn't have any problems even if he fought an elite runic wild boar alone. Since Wu Wei felt so, he decided to test it. He went to find an elite runic wild boar for Yellow to match up against. The results proved to be beyond Wu Wei's expectations. He initially thought it would be a 50-50 scramble between Yellow and the elite runic wild boar. However, he didn't expect that as soon as the battle had commenced, Yellow would end it by killing the elite runic wild boar with a single slash. No way. Wu Wei was dumbfounded at his combat power. For the first time, he realized that he had thoroughly underestimated the uncommon Yellow. It would be hard to blame Wu Wei for doing so, though. After all, Wu Wei had been weak for the longest time and didn't understand the power gap between common grade and uncommon grade. In addition, Yellow's strength and stamina points were extremely low, so he thought Yellow's improvement would not have been so great. It wasn't until Yellow killed the elite runic wild boar with a single slash that Wu Wei realized that at this moment, Yellow now possessed the strength to sweep through the entire wild boar valley. Yes, Wu Wei didn't know whether Yellow had the strength to take on the wild boar king alone. However, there wouldn't be a wild boar king in this valley soon. After all, it had only recently been hunted by Wu Wei. Without the wild boar king around, there was indeed nothing in Wild Boar Valley that could contend against Yellow. This realization made Wu Wei extremely happy. He immediately set off together with Yellow. After just over an hour, they massacred the entire Wild Boar Valley. They had hunted 78 runic wild boars and 4 elite wild boars and acquired 13 drops. Wu Wei did not open any of these glowing drops yet. He stored them all inside his book of runes. One of the advantages of not opening the drops was that they would take up relatively little space in their unopened state. However, to store all the drops, Wu Wei had to take out the medicinal dregs that the black-robed man had given him. Wu Wei only had 3.5 jars of medicinal dregs left from the black-robed man. 3 of the big jars contained strange medicinal dregs, while the last, smaller jar that had not been completely used up contained terrifying medicinal dregs. Right, I almost forgot about this thing. Wu Wei's gaze landed on strange medicinal dregs. Description: medicinal dregs that came about as a byproduct in the making of runic pills. Although it doesn't look very appetizing and has strong side effects upon consumption, such as causing diarrhea accompanied by intense headache for a few hours, it can be used to temper one's spiritual power and body. Looking at the properties of this medicinal pill, Wu Wei was uncertain about how to assess it. Could you call it medicine? When consumed, it would cause diarrhea for more than a few hours, accompanied by an intense headache. Could you call it poison? After all, it did have tempering effects on one's spirit and body. It was tough to assess such a thing. And Wu Wei was extremely curious about its effects. Why don't I try it myself? Since he had thought about it, Wu Wei did just that. Without hesitation, he scooped up a spoonful of medicinal dregs and stuffed it into his mouth. When it entered his mouth, a bitter taste and feeling rushed straight into his throat and nose. Wu Wei could instantly feel his body condition worsen. However, he persisted in swallowing the medicinal dregs down in one mouthful. But it was only after swallowing it that Wu Wei's actual suffering began. As his stomach began to churn, Wu Wei's expression changed, and he immediately called out his book of runes and returned to his dorm, upon which he ran straight for the washroom. The distance from the dormitory to the washroom had never felt so long. When he arrived in the washroom and finally sat on the toilet, Wu Wei felt euphoric, as if the entire world had suddenly become beautiful. However, this euphoric sensation did not last long. After all, who would actually feel like diarrhea was a beautiful thing? Wu Wei's bout lasted an entire hour, during which a severe headache had already set in, exactly as described. Wu Wei himself did not know how he had managed to survive through that 1 hour. When he finally stepped out of the toilet after so long, he felt he had lost almost a third of his body's weight. However, his spiritual energy had somehow become more refined and purer. And although it would be hard to tell just by looking, he had a sensation that his body had become stronger. At this moment, Wu Wei suddenly felt everything was worth it. He even began to contemplate doing it again. Chapter 18. 018 Pulling a Big One. Runic World. At the entrance of Maple Leaf Town. It was early in the morning, and a 4-man team was waiting at the entrance of Maple Leaf Town. The gender ratio of this team was not as balanced as that of Team 8911, in this team, everyone was male. Among the 4 men, one with blonde hair had a blade of grass between his lips. He gave off a frivolous impression. Beside him was an ordinary-looking man who had a bow on his back and an arrow quiver around his waist. There was also a team member who was slender and wore long robes. He held a staff. The last team member was a person with a tall and sturdy figure. He was as big as Yellow. In his hands was a great sword. They were none other than Team 8566, who had contacted Wu Wei previously. At this moment, they were idly waiting for Wu Wei's arrival. As they waited, they began to discuss their new teammate. The archer with the bow on his back was the first to ask, "What do you think our new teammate looks like?" The blonde man scoffed, "A runic summoner with a yellow turban soldier as his first core rune. What do you think he looks like?" "He will look like a new runic summoner. Things are probably going to get tough for us in the future." "Don't say that. I heard that after he left the team, he stayed in Runic World alone for 4 to 5 days. Besides, to be valued by Senior Liu, he must have his merits. Maybe he's some big shot. Who knows what he's been up to those 4 to 5 days? Let me tell you, don't hope for the impossible. When you have unrealistic expectations, and they aren't met, it will only make you feel worse." As the two exchanged opinions, a young man armed with a saber and a crossbow walked out of the town. There were more than 10 glowing lights on his back. Upon seeing this young man, Team 8566 couldn't help but collectively gasp. A big shot. After all, the man looked like a rune master who hunted solo in Runic World. Although not all rune masters who operated solo were necessarily big shots, this person who held a runic armament in his hand and carried 10 drops casually slung across his back. With one look, anyone could tell that he was a big shot whose storage space was already capped full of drops. The sight of such a big shot left Team 8566 in awe. And when they noticed that the man was walking towards them, even the most frivolous blondie straightened his posture and greeted him with a slight bow of his head, as if politely addressing, "Greetings, big shot." However, something started to seem off to him. Why was this big shot approaching them? "It can't be that he wants to give me a beating for looking too arrogant with blonde hair, right?" And just as their suspicions and nervousness mounted, that big shot was already standing in front of them. "It's Team 8566, right?" "Ah." Team 8566 became dumbfounded as this big shot continued with his introduction. "I'm Wu Wei." "Ah." In Maple Leaf Town, Team 8566 watched as Wu Wei walked into the Yuehua Academy's rune shop and retrieved around 30 to 40 spheres of light from his book of runes. Not a single one of them was able to come back to their senses for a long time. The blond man poked Zhou Tian, who was next to him, inquiring, Leader, is he really Wu Wei? Our new teammate?" Zhou Tian's expression was complicated. "We don't know if it's our new teammate, but he should definitely be Wu Wei. There was no reason for him to lie about his identity." The blond man only became more confused. Didn't they say that Wu Wei is a runic summoner? Didn't they say that he was expelled by the team? How did he obtain so many light balls? How many monsters did he have to farm, exactly? At this moment, the archer touched his nose and replied with a knowing expression. "You don't get it, do you? Strength is strength, but hunting is hunting. Although his strength may not be enough, anything is possible in Runic World. Maybe he found a good spot for farming monsters. Or maybe he got lucky and stumbled upon beehives, ant nests, and the like. Toss a fire, and you'll get just as many drops. In that case, while it may look like he has many drops, there's nothing of much worth in reality. he would probably only have 1 or 2 valuable items in that stuffed book of runes. That should be the case. Because they had already formed an image of Wu Wei as a runic summoner in his mind, Team 8566 found it hard to believe that Wu Wei was actually a big shot. However, whether they believed it or not was one thing, their opinions of Wu Wei had already begun to change. They began to realize that regardless of whether Wu Wei was a big shot, he was definitely not just any simple runic summoner. At the same time, Wu Wei had cleared out all his loot in the Maple Leaf Town branch of Yuehu Arun shop. These drops were Wu Wei's harvest from sweeping Wild Boar Valley over and over again in the past 2 days, made possible through hunting even elite runic wild boars. Fortunately, Wild Boar Valley respawn time was relatively short. Ordinary runic wild boars are respawned every few hours, while the elite runic wild boars are respawned daily. This was how Wu Wei could loot so much in a mere 2 days. Although there were many drops, most of them were ingredients like pork ribs, pork trotters, pork loins, and the like. However, didn't fetch a very high price, so if even just one of the drops had been a rune would have been plenty. Although there were a few runic armaments, they were all runic armaments without any skills, so their value was not very high. There was a total of 34 drops, and Wu Wei only got 36 runic stones for them, making an average of 1 runic stone per drop. Of course, Wu Wei was still very content. After all, he had only acquired 6 runic armaments in the last 2 months. If he kept up with sweeping through Wild Boar Valley, Wu Wei would be able to earn at least 18 runic stones a day, which would sum up to over 500 runic stones per month. Then, he would have enough money to inscribe his second core rune. After calculating thus far, Wu Wei suddenly had the impulse to immediately return to the Wild Boar Valley and make it his home for 1 month. However, before that, he needed to settle the appointment with Team 8566. After receiving the runic stones from the lady at the counter, Wu Wei left the shop and returned to where Team 8566 was waiting. "Sorry, I've made you wait. Don't mind it. Fellow student Wu Wei, please have a seat." Blondie, the most enthusiastic person of the team, immediately stood up and offered a seat to Wu Wei upon his arrival. The archer, upon seeing this, immediately passed an iced cola to Wu Wei. "Fellow student Wu Wei, have this iced cola." Wu Wei received the iced cola from the archer, but he did not sit down in the blonde man's seat. As he looked at his potential team members, his gaze fell upon the most muscular person in the 4-man team. "Might you be Captain Zhou Tian?" Matching the deep voice he heard over the phone to his manly appearance, Wu Wei thought that there was no mistaking it, but it turns out he had. The burly man shyly replied, "No, I'm not the captain." It was not just his demeanor that was shy, even the tone of his voice was high, and the moment he opened his mouth, Wu Wei's jaw dropped. Just then, the thinnest person of the team spoke. The moment he opened his mouth, Wu Wei recognized his voice. "Hello, student Wu Wei. I'm the captain of Team 8566, Zhou Tian. It's a pleasure to meet you." The stunned Wu Wei glanced at the burly but shy man, then looked back at Zhou Tian, whose frame did not match the deep, masculine voice he possessed. He became momentarily speechless. Were the voices and personalities of these two people reversed, somehow? While Wu Wei was still speechless, Zhou Tian patted his shoulder with his tiny, slender hands. "Student Wu Wei, are you interested in pulling a big job with us?" Huh. Chapter 19. 019, Tree and Forest. In a forest, about 17 kilometers east of Maple Leaf Town, Team 8566 and Wu Wei carefully moved forward in their exploration. A few hours ago, in Maple Leaf Town, Zhou Tian had invited Wu Wei to pull a big one. He had said that the boss in this forest was infinitely close to reaching stage 1 but was not yet stage 1. Zhou Tian asked Wu Wei if he was interested in hunting it. Initially, Wu Wei had not been interested, but when he heard that the boss was a treant, It piqued his interest. In the last 2 days, Wu Wei had studied many level 10 runic summons, but no matter how hard he studied, Wu Wei could not find any summons that satisfied him more than the Treant. Initially, he had already planned to come here to farm some. By happenstance, Team 8566 had also made plans to come to this area today, so Wu Wei decided to form a party with them to explore the forest. What they were doing right now was based on Wu Wei's suggestion that they first scout out the terrain before hunting monsters. They had already been scouting for more than half an hour. For Wu Wei, this much was nothing. After all, he had once scouted for over half a day. If it were possible, he would like to have done it even longer, but it was evident that Team 8566 had had enough. Blondie, in particular, had grown sick of it after just half an hour. He complained softly. "Say, do we have to be this careful? The strongest boss in this forest is only a first-stage boss. Our party is not aiming to advance anyway. Moreover, we can easily sweep this entire place." After his blonde party member started complaining, the archer couldn't help but chime in. "That's right. If you ask me, we should just start farming. We won't encounter any danger anyway, and even if there's real danger, we can just log out, right?" As soon as he heard what they said, Zhou Tian could not help but frown, and the burly man also seemed conflicted. The two of them were afraid that Wu Wei would feel offended. But Wu Wei immediately raised a hand in apology. Sorry. I forgot that different parties have different styles and subconsciously followed my own. I'm sorry. I've overstepped my boundaries. Let's do it your way." Zhou Tian's answered tactfully, "It's not your problem. There's nothing wrong with being careful in the runic world. However, we're in a hurry. After dealing with this boss, we still have another objective, so it's understandable. Let's do it your way. I'll fully cooperate." Since Wu Wei had said as much, Team 8566 happily obliged. Blondie suddenly stood up. "All right, then. Let's do it. Come on, let's make things livelier." Next, he took out a small gadget and threw it on the ground, after which an ear-piercing ring sounded off. In the next second, the entire forest, which had been silent just a moment ago, was filled with a loud noise. This scene stunned Wu Wei. He had asked Team 8566 to do things however they did, but he had not expected them to act so rashly. Now, all the mobs in the forest would be rushing over. Would they be able to withstand it? While Wu Wei was still dazed in disbelief, the faces of Team 8566's members began to show excitement. Even the most delicate burly man's face had become flushed with excitement. The worst of the bunch was Zhou Tian. With staff in hand, he glared around the forest, growling in his deep voice, "Come to see your father and die." He had practically screamed out the last word, "Die." The sound that skinny and frail body of his could produce was utterly terrifying. Wu Wei, who was right beside him, felt his ears hurting. But his actions were even more shocking and explosive than Zhou Tian's voice. As he shouted out, he waved his hand, and a bolt of lightning struck around 100 meters away, and when the smoke cleared, there was an aged yellow, half-human half-tree treant about 1.5 meters tall at the spot. It had been struck to death by one hit. Uncommon runic spell, Lightning Strike. Wu Wei immediately identified Zhou Tian's first core rune. As soon as Zhou Tian's performance ended, the archer beside him drew out his bow to shoot a flaming arrow. The single arrow set another tree alight. Next, he shot an ice arrow, followed by a wind arrow. Uncommon runic martial arts, enchanted arrow. Zhou Tian and the archer joined hands to put up a spectacular performance. One with thunder and the other with arrows. Together, they killed the treants charging at them one after another before they could even get within 100 meters of range. However, it was only two people, after all. Soon, the treants managed to break through their attacks and approached closely. The blonde-haired man and the muscular man did not simply idle about. As he stood up, a rune on the blonde-haired man's forehead lit up, and he began to transform. Within a few seconds, he turned from a human into a humongous yellow hound. Next to him, the burly man's entire body suddenly turned black. Uncommon runic transformation, Savage Hound. Uncommon runic martial arts, Ironclad. As Wu Wei observed their display, his eyes slowly narrowed. He realized this team was very strong, or at least much stronger than his previous team, Team 8911. In that team, only the captain, Zhou Hong, had high-grade runes, and the rest only had common runes. In this team, however, all the members had high-quality runes. No wonder they dared to act so frivolously. However, if it's only this level, I don't think it will be enough. Wu Wei's eyes narrowed. In half an hour of scouting, although he had not been able to thoroughly check out the entire small forest, he had gained a level of understanding of the situation within. This forest was several times bigger than Wild Boar Valley, and there were many more monsters. There were at least 200 to 300 to start with. These 200 to 300 regular treants alone would be too much for them to handle, and there were still the 10 to 20 elite monsters and even the boss that was pseudo stage 1. If all they did was continue their charade, there was no way it would be enough. As expected, after only a short moment, Zhou Tian's spiritual power had almost depleted, and treants were already approaching within 3 to 5 meters. Now that they had approached so close, the archer could no longer freely shoot his arrows. As for Blondie and Brawny, they were slowly becoming unable to hold on. However, what made Wu Wei curious was that they did not seem to be in any panic whatsoever. It felt like they had some kind of trump card, and Wu Wei could not help but look forward to seeing what it was. Just as Wu Wei was anticipating whatever ultimate move they would pull to turn the tide of the battle, Zhou Tian suddenly spoke as he panted. "It's almost time. Are you finally going to unleash it?" Wu Wei's face was full of anticipation. However, Zhou Tian only said, "Let's log out and come back when we've recovered." Hearing this almost caused Wu Wei to spit out a mouthful of blood. He thought Zhou Tian's team had some massive reversal in store. To think that this much anticipated ultimate move was to abuse the speed of light logout exclusive to rune diviners levels 10 and below. Wu Wei could not help but blurt out, "Aren't you afraid that speed of light logout might fail? And what if you level up?" "Well, even if our levels are too high, there are still other methods. As for speed of light logout, how could it fail? That would be impossible as we've done it hundreds of times without fail." Zhou Xian replied confidently. He then called out his book of runes, but when he tapped logout, there was a sudden buzz, and his face turned pale. The impossible had happened. Wu Wei's face darkened. He was beginning to think that this group of dumbasses had been trying to pull one on him. Chapter 20. 020 Elite Runic Treant. We can't log out anymore. What's going on? Why is this happening? Weren't we fine when we did it before? Why did it suddenly stop working? What should we do now? What to do? Let's just do this. Wu Wei finally confirmed that Team 8566 was a team of reckless people. They were used to relying on lightspeed logout, but now that they couldn't do it, they were all panicking. However, although these people were reckless, they still had a sense of loyalty. At this critical moment, Zhou Tian patted Wu Wei on the shoulder. "Student Wu Wei, don't worry. We were the ones who caused this. We will definitely protect you well. Even if you die, you will definitely be the last to die." "Why, thank you." Wu Wei's face darkened as he spat out the words with difficulty. Wu Wei did not expect that after Zhou Tian said so, the other team members also went along with it. They immediately gathered around Wu Wei as the core and started to beat a retreat. They continued to battle while retreating, but unfortunately, They were already in the depths of tree and forest and had already arrogantly caused a big commotion. At this point, escaping already seemed harder than ascending to the heavens. At best, it was a situation where they would only get out 1 in 10 times. In no time, Zhou Tian and Archer Boy started to incur more and more injuries. The treant's encirclement was getting tighter and tighter, and it looked like they would not be able to make it through. "Brothers, let's try out the log-out function again." Zhou Tian instructed Wu Wei to test the log-out function again. However, after receiving his reply that it still wasn't working, all the faces of Team 8566's members instantly went pale. "It's over. We've gone and done it this time. I'm sorry, brother, there's no turning back. But don't worry, we will do our best to save you. Blondie, Brawny, the two of you don't need to care about us anymore. Just do whatever you can to escort student Wu Wei out." Zhou Tian's face had whitened to the extent that it seemed like he was giving his final orders as the team leader. The giant hound, Blondie, was the first to object. He gritted his teeth, saying, "I'm not leaving. If we die together." Wu Wei was frankly surprised. During their time together, Blondie had not given Wu Wei an excellent impression, causing him to feel like this flippant person could not be a good person. However, he did not expect that at the most critical moment, Blondie, who was the only one who could escape alone, would choose not to abandon the team and run away. Although Wu Wei could hear the fear in his voice, Blondie still gritted his teeth and resolved to fight with the team till the end. It was evident that this team had strong bonds. They just weren't as warm to him because he was an outsider. As Blondie ground his teeth, Zhou Tian forced himself to stand up. "Who would want to die in battle with you? I will die right now." Next, the reckless Zhou Tian charged toward the mob of treants. Zhou Tian had acted too suddenly and decisively for his teammates, who had their hands full against the tree spirit, to have any time to react. Just as Zhou Tian was about to dive headfirst into the treants, a hand reached to grab a hold of him. It was none other than Wu Wei. Wu Wei felt speechless as he looked at the foolish man. "What's with all the dying? I don't think there's any need for that. No, right now." Zhou Tian was in mid-speech when he suddenly saw Wu Wei raise his hand. Immediately after, a bright, glowing yellow light appeared, and in the next second, yellow appeared. However, seeing Wu Wei finally call out his summon brought only worry to Team 8566 and no joy. They felt that having another yellow turban soldier would hardly change anything in this situation. As if he could carve out a path for them. But soon, they realized that this yellow turban soldier did not seem to be the same as ordinary yellow turban soldiers. It seemed to be much bigger and much stronger. Before Team 8566 could figure out what was going on, Wu Wei equipped Yellow with the boar slaughtering saber and gave an order. "Break through towards the south." What Team 8566 saw next was the sight of the 2 meters tall Yellow slicing his way through the mobs with his saber. Slashing and stabbing sounds reverberated through the air. Just one single slash of Yellow's killed 3 treants on the spot. 2 meters tall. 1 slash, 3 kills. This is a yellow turban soldier. That single slash left the entire team thunderstruck. And it had only been the beginning. Yellow raised his saber and continued attacking like crazy, each of his slashes taking down at least 1 treant. In a short time, the southern part of the treant's encirclement had been opened up. "Don't just stand there. Break through to the south immediately. Break through to the south." South was not the direction they had come from, nor was the entrance to the treant forest there. Why would they break through to the south? However, although no one in the team knew why, none of them raised any doubts at this critical moment. Wu Wei was now the big boss, and only his word mattered. Thus, Team 8566 followed Wu Wei's lead. They followed Wu Wei, or more accurately, they followed the yellow turban super soldier and headed southward to escape the encirclement. After a short while, they arrived at a rocky area. Although we aren't that deep in the forest now, it won't be easy to kill our way out. When we were scouting, I noticed this rocky area could prove helpful. Over here, we will use the advantageous terrain to mount our last hold against the treants. Wu Wei immediately revealed his plan when they had arrived. Team 8566 immediately began to coordinate with him. Brother Wu, what do you think of that place? As the team's expert in archery, the archer's eyes shone as he spotted a good sniping spot. Wu Wei looked over and saw a gigantic rock and two smaller rocks on either side, providing good cover. If they took up that spot, they would not have to worry about sudden attacks from their rear. It's good. The team immediately rushed over to occupy the area. Having yellow around gave them a feeling of invincibility. Blondie, Brawny, stand guard with me. Zhou Tian, if you or the archer have any pills, then take them now. If you don't have any pills, hurry up and try to recover. Okay. Without the possibility of danger behind them, the pressure on Wu Wei and the others' defense was significantly lightened. They soon found resting areas for Zhou Tian and the archer. For now, their situation had greatly improved. However, just as everyone could catch a breather, two vines suddenly stretched out and lashed against Goldie and the Brawny. Goldie reacted quickly and dodged, but Brawny, who was less agile, could not dodge and became entangled. Just as the vines were about to drag Brawny towards a group of treants, Wu Wei raised his crossbow and shot an arrow to sever the vines. Exposed after having fired, a treant that was bigger than a standard tree spirit broke through the large gap in their defense and charged straight towards Wu Wei. Team 8566's expressions worsened when they saw this. Could a rune summoner like Wu Wei survive a direct assault from an elite treant? And just as they were about despair, a furious roar pierced the air. I'll f-king kill you. Chapter 21. 021 Treant King. Followed by a furious roar, Wu Wei raised the wild boar crossbow in his hand and directly swung it towards the face of the elite runic treant. However, despite how valiant he seemed, Team 8566 could not help but start to despair. They didn't think that Wu Wei, a runic summoner, would be capable of besting a treant in close combat. After all, not even runic martial artists with common grade martial arts runes would be capable of taking down this thing. Yet, what happened next wholly dumbfounded Team 8566. Wham! Wu Wei actually smacked the elite runic treant straight to the ground. And, as if that were all, Wu Wei even mounted it like a hungry tiger pouncing on its prey. Then, a crazy flurry of attacks upon the elite runic treant with the wild boar crossbow in his hand. As he fought, Wu Wei cursed non-stop. Trying to attack me? Did you think I was a pushover? Do you know how I've been living for the past 2 days? He was getting quite carried away. It was just an elite runic treant. What could it know? How could it have known that Wu Wei had forced himself to finish up one whole jar of strange medicinal dregs 2 days ago? In just the last 2 days, Wu Wei had spent close to 30 hours in the toilet. If not for the fact that he didn't pass out anything solid, the toilet would have clogged up. During those 30 hours, both Wu Wei's mind and his lower body had undergone terrible suffering. However, the suffering had been worth it. Having downed an entire bottle of the medicine, Wu Wei's current body was comparable to that of a similar leveled runic martial artist with uncommon grade runes. His strengthened body, coupled with the element of surprise, allowed Wu Wei to forcefully smash the elite runic treant into smithereens. When the elite runic treant exploded in front of him, it dropped 2 lights, and Wu Wei finally felt redeemed for his 2 days of suffering. Meanwhile, the members of Team 8566 were by now entirely stunned by Wu Wei's display of might. After all, the treant that Wu Wei had just smashed up was an elite runic treant. For a monster like that to have been so one-handedly bashed up by Wu Wei, a runic summoner, could you still call him a burden summoner? Why did he seem fiercer than Blondie was? At the same time, Brawny, who had finally broken free from his restraints, hurriedly returned to his position to protect, somewhat ironically, the fiercer-looking Wu Wei. After Yellow caught wind of the situation on Wu Wei's side, he retreated to reinforce the defensive line. It was evident that the big yellow guy had really become smarter. Then, Wu Wei immediately opened the 2 drops from the elite runic treant. Ding! You have opened the white drop and obtained an uncommon treant heart. Ding! You have opened the common drop and obtained a runic armament, treant longsword. Description: a material that came from an elite runic treant. It can either be consumed or applied as medicine. When consumed directly, it recovers stamina and spiritual energy. Runic magic weapon. Effect: attacks against the enemy have a chance to absorb 1% of the enemy's physical strength and spiritual energy as self-recovery. P.S. Only useful against treants leveled 10 or lower. Usage requirements. It turned out that both items were rather ordinary, but they were still of use to Wu Wei in the current situation. Without wasting time complaining, he immediately divided the treant heart into several portions. He gave a portion to each team member 8,566, keeping the remaining 1/3. Next, he changed Yellow's weapon. Although the treant longsword seemed quite lousy, only absorbing 1% of stamina and spiritual energy from level 10 or lower treants, it was still more suitable than the wild boar sword for the occasion. Yellow, now equipped with the treant longsword, made quick work of the few treants around him, triggering the vampiric effect twice in the process. It seemed like the probability of triggering the effect was relatively high, taking only about 3 or 4 slashes to activate. Seeing this made Wu Wei's eyes glow up. If the chance of triggering the effect was this high, he would not have to worry about Yellow's physical strength being exhausted. Meanwhile, on the other side of the battle, where Team 8566 was. After eating the treant hearts, they slowly recovered their physical strength and spiritual energy. Zhou Tian and the archer were immediately able to stand up. Brother Wu, we'll help too. Archer boy, you're good to go. Don't use enchanted arrow. Just fire normal arrows. Captain Zhou Tian, you haven't fully recovered yet. Stabilize yourself and focus on recovering. Wu Wei's eyes narrowed when he noticed the treants had continued their attack in droves. There's something off about the treants. I don't think it's simply a matter of us having provoked them. There should be some other monster commanding them from the back, and if I'm not wrong, it could be a boss we're dealing with here. If I'm not mistaken, it must be hiding in the dark and waiting for its chance to attack, so we need to be ready for it. Alright, we'll listen to Brother Wu. In just a short while, Wu Wei had successfully conquered the hearts of Team 8566. Arrow Boy drew his bow and nocked his arrow, continuing to provide long-range cover fire to the team. Zhou Tian continued to sit cross-legged and focused on recovering his spiritual energy. As for Wu Wei, he defended with the wild boar sword while constantly squinting his eyes to look around the battlefield to make the best call like a commander. Under Wu Wei's command, Team 8566's defense became more and more stable. From time to time, Yellow would charge in to pick up some drops, and he acquired several treant hearts that the team used to replenish their strength. Although it seemed like the situation was steadily improving for the team, Wu Wei did not dare to let his guard down. That was because he had been keeping track through his observation of the entire battle. Until now, most of the mobs they faced were normal runic treants, and only 5 elite runic treants had appeared so far. This was not normal. There were at least a dozen elite tree spirits in the treant forest, so where were they? Furthermore, the boss itself had not shown up either. It was as if the sword of Damocles were hanging over their heads. Even if the elite treants and the boss remained hidden, their presence loomed over the battlefield. Hence, Wu Wei became more and more cautious as the battle progressed. Because the threat was imminent. And Wu Wei had guessed right. While observing the surroundings with narrowed eyes, his line of sight fell upon an unusual stat window. Skills. Treant disguise, able to disguise its body. Frenzied roots, able to use its roots to carry out unexpected attacks. After finding the stat window, Wu Wei glanced around to see that many elite treants had suddenly appeared. It became clear to him that the decisive moment of battle was just around the corner. Chapter 22. 022 Kill. Runic World. At the rocky area in Treant Forest. After sending wave after wave of runic treants to attack Wu Wei and the others for about 2 hours, the runic treant king finally made its move. However, it wasn't because it had finally felt that the time was ripe. Although it had initially planned to use ordinary runic treants to deplete Yellow's strength, Yellow was still alive and kicking even after 2 hours. Instead, it was its treants that had suffered heavy losses. As it realized its strategy wasn't working, it could only change its strategy, and it decided to act early. At this moment, it relied on its disguise skill to blend in with the ordinary runic treants and quietly approach Yellow. It knew that the high-rank Yellow among Wu Wei's group was the strongest. As long as it took down Yellow, all it needed to do was distract him for a while. At that moment, it would let the remaining elite runic treants attack Wu Wei's group and get rid of these pests. Then, it could come back for Yellow, claiming victory in one fell swoop. This was the runic treant king's second strategy. While it seemed like an excellent strategy to the treant king at the moment of planning, execution-wise. As the runic treant king approached Yellow slowly to position itself, it found an opportunity to strike. Suddenly came a deafening roar. Fker, die. The runic treant king was shocked by the voice. Before it could react, a descending bolt of lightning struck the unprepared runic treant king. At the same time, Archer Boy, who had been using ordinary arrows, grabbed the few remaining arrows he had left to finally unleash his enchanted arrows. 3 consecutive blazing arrows were let loose on the runic treant king. The sudden attack caused the runic treant king to be at a loss for what to do. It did not understand how it had been exposed. However, the runic treant king was still a runic treant king. As a boss, it had its own tricks. Although it was caught off guard and even took a lightning strike, it was not killed on the spot like an ordinary runic treant would be. It had only been a small amount of damage, and it could even react to block 2 of the 3 arrows shot by the archer. As it could not block the 3rd arrow in time, the runic treant king activated its ultimate skill without hesitation. Numerous roots extended out of the ground from a 5-meter radius around it, and it managed to grab the 3rd arrow out of its flight. However, as it successfully defended against the arrow, it heard another roar. Fker, die. It was the same cry as Zhou Tian previously. The difference was that this cry was not backed by the domineering aura that Zhou Tian's was backed by. Instead, it even sounded a little silly, and the tone of the voice sounded weird as if a forced mimicry of the earlier cry. But the voice's owner was not only close but even rapidly closing in onto the runic treant king. It was none other than Yellow. He was charging towards the runic treant king. The runic treant king was terrified. It quickly sent all its tree roots within a 5-meter radius to surround Yellow, attempting to restrain him and prevent him from approaching. However, although the tree roots could wrap around Yellow's body, they could not hold him back. That was because the moment the tree roots wrapped around Yellow, a glowing yellow rune suddenly appeared on Yellow's forehead. Next, Yellow's entire body also started to glow yellow. The moment this light appeared, the numbers 1/3000 appeared in front of Wu Wei. Yellow's strength attribute instantaneously increased from 1 to 2.5, and even Wu Wei was surprised to see Yellow easily break free from the tree roots wrapping around him. Yellow continued to slash his way closer and arrived directly in front of the runic treant king. Next, he raised his sword before slashing down. The long-awaited boar slaughtering slash was finally unleashed, cleaving the runic treant king into 2. It would have died immediately after being cut in half if it were an ordinary runic monster. However, The runic Treant King was a plant-type runic monster, so its vitality level was terrifying. Even after being cut in half, it was still not dead yet. Fortunately, Zhou Tian had still been there, and with another lightning strike, he struck it down, charring one half of the runic Treant King's body black. Yellow then unleashed another powerful strike to end the runic Treant King's life, and it exploded. Several drops flew out with its demise. At the same time, the number 120th appeared in front of Wu Wei's eyes. However, Wu Wei did not have the time to think about this number. After all, the crisis had not been fully resolved yet. Although the runic Treant King had died, the elite runic Treants were still there. Yellow, continue. Under Wu Wei's orders, Yellow, who was in the yellow turban strength state, charged right into the remaining elite monsters. In his path of carnage, he slashed and slashed as if he were slicing melons or chopping vegetables. He killed another 5 elite runic Treants in less than 3 minutes. And since 3 minutes had passed, the yellow light surrounding Yellow's body gradually faded, and his physical strength finally started to drain. Fortunately, at this point, the battle was already coming to its close. Having killed the runic Treant King, Yellow seemed as imposing as a demon god. The remaining elite runic Treants began to become afraid and started making their escape. With the elites gone, the ordinary runic Treants stood no chance. They were quickly dealt with by Wu Wei and the others. A few minutes later, Wu Wei and Team 8566 finally finished clearing the battlefield and sat atop a pile of rocks. Looking at the drops spread all over the battlefield, Wu Wei let out a sigh of relief. All of the members of Team 8566 were filled with excitement and satisfaction. Awesome! That's what a real man does. That's right, isn't this just how battles should be? Yeah. Let's do it again. Wu Wei's face darkened as he listened to their conversation. This group of B***stards clearly only remember what's fun for them. Earlier on, their situation had been full of despair, and they were almost on the verge of crying. This bunch of fools was the type that was prone to repeating the same mistakes. Wu Wei made a mental note to not get too close to them. If he were to spend time with such crazy people, he would also turn crazy. Nonetheless, while Wu Wei did not particularly appreciate the foolish behavior of this team, he had to admit that he did fit in well. In their bout of excitement, the team gathered around Wu Wei. "Brother Wu, you're a perfect match for us. Let us tag along with you in the future." "Yeah. If we form a team, we'll become invincible. If you join, I'll even let you be captain." "Brother Wu, I like your style. Like my foot. You may like me, but I don't like you." Wu Wei responded to the 4 hopeful faces. "About joining the team, let's leave that for later. Let's tidy up what we've earned first. Also, Zhou Tian, immediately contact the school and tell them about the logout problem. Ask the school to send someone to investigate. This incident might be related to the disappearance of Team 8911. When Wu Wei said this, the eyes of all the members of Team 8566 lit up. "Brother Wu, wait a moment, I think there might be a hidden secret in this forest. It could even be a secret dungeon. Do you want to check it out?" Wu Wei expressed his firm refusal. "Nah, better not. I'm tired. After distributing the spoils of war, I'll return to rest." What kind of joke was he making? They had just escaped death, but it seemed like they hadn't had enough. Part 1 of the series ends here. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like and subscribe so we can be motivated to make even better videos in the future.